Good evening, everyone. We were wrapping up our closed session, so we're going to give the rest of the council a moment to log into this meeting. So thank you for your patience. Give us another minute, please. All right, good evening, folks. I'd like to call the meeting to order for our March 9th City Council meeting. Again, apologize for the delay, but now that the meeting is called to order, we will stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you very much. Again, we are starting our March 9th meeting. Our first order of business is to report out on the closed session. No reportable action was taken during the closed session. So moving on to approval of the agenda. We have our agenda before us. Do we have any substantive changes that people wish to make, the councilors wish to make to the agenda? And I'm going to ask for help here. I am having a hard time seeing more than just a few people at a time, so feel free to speak up. Any public comment regarding the agenda? All right, seeing none.
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda as is. I'll second it.
And so we have a first from Grover, a second from West. Russ, are you on the call? Yes. Russ, a lot of meetings I've been to recently have, for non sort of hot ticket items, have moved to are there any opposed to the agenda? If not, it passes, or do we need to do roll call for everything?
Yeah, in the Zoom protocol meeting, typically they're doing roll call on all items, just for clarity, so there's no dispute as to council action.
Okay.
But that's a limited issue for Zoom, WebEx, electronic meeting.
And you don't see any problem with us saying, is there anyone opposed to us approving the agenda and then moving forward, and for action items, switching over to the roll call?
Yes, you're ready. You're
Okay.
ready.
All right. Do we have anybody opposed to the motion to approve the agenda? All right. Hearing none, the agenda is approved. Moving on, we have two sets of minutes for consideration this evening. The first is the set of minutes from January 26th, 2021. Do we have any substantive changes or additions to the agenda from the council? Not to the agenda, sorry, to the minutes. Seeing none, do we have any public comment regarding the minutes from January 26th?
I have one.
Please identify yourself.
Anita Thompson.
Go ahead.
It's under it's item 7 under staff reports. As you're aware, that was the same evening where we had the big storm, so that's probably why it was difficult to understand what my request was. In the minutes, it states that I quote, requested an incident that I experienced to be included in November stats, unquote. But instead what I did was I requested for Lieutenant Miller to include a break-in and theft that was omitted from his November report. That was the November 6, 2020, my next door neighbor's property was broken into and several items were stolen. So she reported the theft to the police. There's a case, and I still request that that item be included in the November report so it reflects accurate data, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Thompson. Gabe, can you, have you taken a note for that for the minutes?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I certainly have.
All right, thank you. Any other public comment regarding the January 26 minutes? All right, let's also consider the minutes in the packet from February 9th. Any substantive changes, additions, deletions from the minutes from the council for February 9th?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Okay. It'll be on page 6, and it's under Steve Madrone's section. There's a clerk's note, and the clerk's note would be modified to read, Trinidad does not pay into CSA 4, but does pay for city emergency, fire, and medical services, period. And the second sentence would read, Trinidad does not have a written mutual aid agreement with CAL FIRE, but does have an oral mutual aid agreement with CAL FIRE, period. And the verbiage was given earlier to Gabe, so he has that verbiage also.
Okay, thank you, Eli. Other substantive changes from the council? All right, seeing none. Any public comment regarding the minutes from the February 9th council meeting? All right, hearing and seeing none, do we have a motion for the minute as
I'll
amended?
make a motion that we accept the minutes as,
I'll second.
All right, anyone opposed to approving the minutes as amended? All right, seeing
I like
none,
that.
we'll move on. So at this point, we have council reports and committee assignments. And I'm going to start with Mr. Grover.
Okay, I was able to attend the Redwood Coast Energy Authority. I'm on the board of directors there. I am going to be on the subcommittee for the offshore wind program. And I'm also on the subcommittee for the racial equity thing that we're starting there. So there's going to be some policy that I'll probably be bringing back and maybe hopefully integrating into our own city on things to stay in stride with the change that's going to occur with our climate change and our energy procurement and energy needs and stuff here is really going to be a vital source to have this data available for us. And that's about all I did. I did attend the Green Party general meeting too. There is some movement towards eco-socialism, and I'm going to be doing presentations on that as soon as we can get outside a little more, so that we can start working with communities hand in hand a little more and get a little more power at the local level of the decisions being made. So that's something that anybody can email me about if they have interest in that too. Thanks.
Thank you, David. Mr. West.
I did get a written report in the minutes this time, or in the packet this time. I'll just let you know the final Eureka Broadway bimodal corridor plan is, we had to vote on that. It's $155 million program or upgrade project for Highway 101 on the full length of the Broadway corridor. So it's a really interesting plan, and it can be found on the HCOG website. If you're interested in finding out more about it, you can see what they're going to do. They're going to break it into 3 sections and upgrade Broadway They have a lot of different ideas. There's a lot of money involved, so the plans may change. But at this point, we move forward to the next stage of turning Broadway into what looks like a pretty spectacular road once they get this done. So if you want to see what they're doing, go to HCOG, look up the Broadway multimodal corridor plan. You can see what they're going to do. And last chance grade, I think Eli can tell you this, has been a big mess, but they got $14 million emergency fund to try to at least keep it open and do what they can to keep it close to opening by April. By the end of April, they should have at least narrowed down the potential alternate routes for Highway 101. That's all it'll be, is just getting alternate routes from 6 to whatever number they're going to get down to. They may even get it down to one single route. But so they're getting closer, or it's still a long ways off, but it's getting better. That's it.
Thank you very much. Mr. Davies.
Nothing to report until item number 7.
Very good. Richard?
Yeah, so I've submitted my committee reports in writing to the city clerk today. I was kind of caught unawares. By last Thursday, I didn't see anything posted about this week's meeting. I didn't know whether it's going to be scheduled this week or next week. I had no idea. So I'm going to just go through it, but I've submitted this in writing to Gabe. And I know we're going to be reviewing committee assignments by the end of this meeting. So I just want to update folks about some of the committees that I've been working on. The Indian Gaming Benefits Committee has been inactive since 2011 due to lack of funds. The Humboldt Waste Management Authority. This was an authority that has members in Arcata, Blue Lake, Eureka, Ferndale, the County of Humboldt, and Rio Dell. The city of Trinidad and Fortuna have never been members. And when I went back to review the city council notes, this was discussed back in 2009 with Mayor Fulkerson about joining this management authority, but it never happened. And in discussions with the director, Jill Duffy, she said she'd be happy to review whether Trinidad could become a member, but I really don't see the benefit. I know we have limited resources, so I don't really see that we should continue to go down this path to monitor the Humboldt Waste Management Authority unless we want to become bona fide members of this organization, and we have not been at any time. The third committee is the California Coastal National Monument Gateway Committee. The next meeting's going to be March 11th this week at 10 o'clock, and I've put the agenda in to look at the strategic plan and what different activities want to take place over the next 6 to 9 months. The Humboldt County Visitors Bureau, the fourth committee, I was able to get the Trinidad Civic Club connected up with Kristen Kearns, the office manager of the Visitors Bureau, to update the website content on visitredwoods.com so that now the Trinidad Civic Club has more accurate information on this county-based website. Finally, number 4, the Trinidad Water Committee. We've not met really since I would say over 2 months ago, since the drought kind of came to an end with the rain. But what I do want to report is that we paid for a Liffenholtz Creek flow meter to work by telemetry, and we still don't have one that works. So I'm going to again ask the city clerk to talk to Pacific Watershed and see if we can get the flow meter that we're paying for activated so that the folks at the Waterworks, Public Works, can get an up-to-date flow meter reading, because we're not going to have rain forever. It's going to become spring soon, and the rains are going to begin to slow down. And I really want to know from a water perspective what the flow rate is, Liffenholtz Creek. And finally, with my research in the city council, we all know that the Edward Street connectivity project was not passed. But back in 2009, the city paid for a traffic safety report by Winsler and Kelly, and I attached this report. This report indicated that a three-way stop sign at the top of the hill with Edwards and Trinity would be recommended and justified. At that time, the council decided to paint fog lines and do a couple of crosswalks, but didn't proceed with putting in stop signs. So I want to bring this to the attention of the council. This was a report that was already done and paid for, but the city council back in 2010 discussed it in January, February, March meetings, but didn't proceed to do much other than paint a few lines on the road. My concern is that the current GHD engineers that we have looked at it and said this report would still be useful today. Our city planner indicated the Coastal Commission does not require a permit to put in stop signs. So it's really up to this council to review this traffic study report that was already done and paid for that would justify putting in a three-way stop sign should the community want that at the top of Edwards and Trinity. So I've included that in my report because I want people to understand that the city paid for this study, they accepted it, they discussed it, but back in 2009, they didn't act on it. And my concern is as we have more tourists and our own residents that need to cross those streets, it can sometimes be a problem with folks going around that corner and not having any ability to slow down for pedestrians. So I just wanted to bring that to the council's attention, and I'll be happy to review that at any time in future meetings. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Klompus. All I have to report is that tomorrow or Thursday, I can't remember which, I'm meeting with an ad hoc group of elected officials throughout the county to start addressing traffic safety countywide. So got an invite to that, and so I will be able to report out that in the future. So I'm looking forward to seeing what our overall traffic needs are, and I think it dovetails nicely with what Richard was just talking about on the local level. So at this point, thank you for the updates, gentlemen, and we will move on to staff report. Turn it over to you, Mr. Naffa.
Okay, thank you. I noticed that Kevin Miller, the lieutenant who covers our area, is on the line. So I was going to invite him to go first, and then I'll go after him.
Hopefully the glare from my patrol car is not too much. If it is, please somebody speak up and I'll shut my video down. I want to go over our February statistics for the greater Trinidad area. And again, these statistics also cover areas in the sphere of influence of Trinidad, which would include parts of West Haven, Patrick's Point Drive, and Scenic Drive. The other thing I kind of want to point out, because I think there might be some miscommunication or misunderstanding of these statistics, are that this is a snapshot of our overall activity in the area over a month's period of time. So it's not a finite list of everything that's occurred. And I don't have access to all the names or anything like that of exactly who is reported a crime or not. I can say that if you called the sheriff's office to make a report and you spoke with a deputy, a community service officer, a dispatcher, then that call is memorialized from here on out. It'll always be in our record system. So the best way, if you have a question regarding that, is to certainly reach out to the sheriff's office or even your local deputy who can answer that question for you if you have concerns that a report wasn't made. But if you called us and talked to a dispatcher or to, again, a deputy or a CSO or community service officer or made an online report, then there's a report that is memorialized for here on out, the end of the time. So in February, we responded to 226 calls for service. We took 20 reports, 4 arrests were made. 7 of those reports were for felony investigations and 14 were for misdemeanor investigations. We also had 1 domestic violence call, 12 burglaries either to a vehicle or a residence, 1 vandalism, 2 petty thefts, 5 disturbances, 2 narcotics cases, 3 trespassing or prowler calls. We responded to 7 alarms, conducted 19 patrol checks, 7 pedestrian checks, We got 8 suspicious person or vehicle calls that we responded to, and 3 unwanted camps or illegal camps. There was 1 call for fireworks or the report of shots heard, and we conducted 15 traffic stops. And then there were 140 miscellaneous calls for service in the last month. So overall, the activity up there is actually down 2% from in January. And that's my report.
Okay, thank you, Lieutenant Miller. I don't know if anyone has any questions. So I'll wait for a few minutes, for a little bit to see if any questions.
I just wondered, that was fireworks the other night that I heard at about midnight. Is that something you were talking about specifically?
Again, the statistics that I have don't have the actual call for me to look at. So like I said, we had 1 shots fired or report of fireworks up in that area. So, and another
fireworks.
well, hopefully, yes, hopefully.
I saw them. So.
Oh, well, there you go. Perfect. Most of the times it is fireworks, which is better than actual gunshots. So, but also these reports and the statistics that I speak to, right after this meeting or tomorrow morning, actually, this will be forwarded to the city clerk, so it could be included in the minutes from this meeting. So it'll be available for everyone to see exactly what I'm looking at.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lieutenant Miller. I did want to comment regarding Councilmember Grover's question. A resident that happens to live near that area where fireworks did happen said that they did see fireworks happening, which was around midnight that evening. So I just wanted to confirm that. And then that information of whatever I got was forwarded to the Sheriff's Department to help supplement whatever other information they had. In addition to that, since Lieutenant Miller is still on the line, I did want to mention that I had asked him about the status of our contract, and he did send me an email and said that he had spoken to one of the officials at the Sheriff's Office, and they said that after budget submissions are done, that we will have enough information to put together some proposed costs around May or June. Anticipating it takes a few months to get the new contracts through everyone's boards, they're predicting completion of new contracts for the Sheriff's Office and the city to be around September. And therefore, they're preparing an extension until the end of September. So we've had some questions that have been raised by residents about when that contract was going to be processed. So I did want to update the residents and also the council, since we will be going through the budget process, between April, May, and June. And so that will be part of the consideration, but we won't have the contract extend. It will have the contract extension, but not a new contract until later on this fall. In addition to that, I did want to comment regarding Councilmember Klumpus had mentioned about Pacific Watershed. I was able to speak to their CEO and requested that, number one, that they go ahead and make sure that our system is working properly, so that our staff is able to utilize the system that is in place. And number two, that they would respond to the water board's request for further information about our flow meter. In addition to that, I did want to say that in my staff report, unfortunately, it wasn't. It got in a little bit late on Friday, so it didn't get in to the packet on time, and so therefore I was just going to summarize it real quickly. Number one, I did mention about Measure Z funds. We use the Measure Z funds to supplement the cost of part of our deputy sheriff position, and the advisory committee for Measure Z voted to continue some of the applications that they had received. And fortunately, the one that we proposed was one of the ones that they're continuing for consideration. The Ocean Protection Council, which we have received approval of a grant from them, had a 2-day online conference from the University of California, Irvine. And I, along with some of other staff members, had attended part of that council's conference, which included information about sea level rise, sediment management, and scaling coastal resiliency solutions. Regarding the Verizon cell tower, there's currently the one that's functioning off of Quarry Road, and we still have the one at Trinidad Head. And there was a second tower in addition to Quarry Road that they're working on, and they have completed all the paperwork that they need and got all their permits, and they will commence construction in April for that second cell tower. Furthermore, the CARES Act through the federal government, $350 million has been approved by the House and the Senate, and that $350 million will go towards state and local governments. So we're anticipating to receive a part of that CARES Act fund. And also the STR Advisory Committee will be meeting virtually on March 23rd at 5 p.m. And I did want to note, and you probably have heard it from other sources, that our Humboldt County Airport will be having nonstop flights to Phoenix Sky Harbor Airport beginning June 3rd of this year, with daily departures and arrivals. And then that will connect with the rest of the country and provide some improved ability for people to fly around the country, which should be good that, by June, hopefully the COVID situation will have improved as far as the numbers, and the government, federal government is planning that by the end of May, they're saying there will be enough vaccine available for every person that would want to receive it. And hopefully everyone will, so that we can all be protected. That's the end of my report. If anyone has any comments or questions, let me know.
Yes, Eli? Richard Thomas.
Yes.
I have just a couple quick questions. One is for Lieutenant Miller, if he's still on the line. There's been a number of comments about robberies at night and vehicles, and I just want to be clear, at least for my own information and those for our constituents, that there are patrols at night through Trinidad and the greater Trinidad area. Could you just verify that, or at least speak to it perhaps for a few minutes?
Yeah, I certainly can. Actually, that is very true. There are patrols through the city. If you don't have one of your Trinidad deputies on that's assigned to the city, I've given direction to all my nighttime supervisors and all my weekend supervisors to have their deputies go up and drive through the city as often as possible. Another thing some of you may have noticed is the last 2 weeks, you've actually had a deputy assigned to the city, and that's in response to some of the vehicle burglaries and break-ins and the trends that we've been tracking and following. So that one of the decisions that we made at that point was to move one of the deputies and modify his hours, so he's working at a different time than he normally was, and he worked into the evenings. So for operational security, that wasn't let out, because we don't want the bad guys to also learn that too. But so the last 2 weeks that's been going on, and it'll continue for a short period of time more.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Eli, the second question I had for you was, since Verizon is putting in a second tower, any indication that AT&T is also putting in a second tower, or no?
Yeah, unfortunately, all of my efforts with AT&T have not been fruitful. Initially, they said that they were going to co-locate with Verizon in that West Haven tower. But then following that, they ended up building, they said, a taller tower off of Quarry Road. and they felt that that was adequate, number one. And number two, they said that their current policy is that they replace one cell tower for another. So when they removed the equipment from Trinidad Head and they are utilizing the Quarry Road site, they said that that was the one-for-one transfer. I've had a few residents asking me about AT&T service, and I have suggested that they also try to contact AT&T, hoping that if enough from their customer base, contact them, that they may reconsider about co-locating with that Verizon tower or doing something in addition to the Quarry Road tower to help improve that coverage. In addition to that, as far as Verizon, I was in touch with them again today, and they have assured me that they're planning on continuing the service at Trinidad Head until that second tower is complete and is tested to make sure that we have adequate cell coverage. Part of our concern is the fact that the Sheriff's Department and the fire department and so on. So our public safety relies on the cell towers. And as a result, we want to make sure that Verizon is providing sufficient coverage since it appears that AT&T may not be at the moment. I'm not so sure as to US Cellular and their coverage in the area. So if anyone is a US Cellular customer, let me know. I know previously it seemed to be fairly decent, even though they don't have a tower exactly in our area, but apparently their service, I think, adequately from their other towers. So that's as far as I know at the moment with the various cell carriers.
Thank you, Eli. Appreciate that.
You're welcome.
Any other questions for our city manager? All right, seeing none. Thank you very much, Eli, for that report. At this point, we are moving into items from the floor. This time, members of the comment items not appearing on the agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes or less. Comments should be directed to the council as a whole, to individual council members or staff. Council and staff responses will be minimal for non-agenda items. And at this point, I open it up for items from the floor, and feel free to start speaking. And I will also look for people that are motioning and waving hands and leaving comments.
Anita has her hand up.
Okay.
Go ahead, Anita.
Thank you. I just want to give a shout out to Gabriel Adams for the city council minutes. As a person who records the minutes, he fulfills an important role for our city by sharing information for future references and helps us to measure what kind of progression has taken place. Gabriel effectively records what has happened during council meetings, especially when decisions have been reached and commitments have been made. He is also successful at summarizing the public's comments. For example, in regards to tonight's January 26th and February 9th minutes, both my public comments were 3 minutes long. Gabriel was able to impressively recap my public comments in just a few sentences. Thank you for all you do, Gabe.
Very nice, Ms. Thompson, very nice. Other items from the floor?
Good evening. Can
Go
you
ahead.
hear me? This is Kathleen Holman. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, yes, I liked what Anita Thompson said. Thank you, Gabe. At the last meeting, I had asked that a note be posted with Supervisor Madrone's false and misleading information regarding my family's property. If you remember, he submitted his incorrect, misleading comments to you under Humboldt County Board of Supervisors stationery or letterhead and signed the 5th District Supervisor, which gives additional weight to his words. So I would appreciate if a warning could be posted with his letter, kind of like it was done in the minutes that you approved earlier. There are 2 occasions where Supervisor Madrone made incorrect verbal statements, regarding city fire service and mutual aid, and the clerk and manager posted a correction with the statements. In regards to the pipeline feasibility study, I find it disappointing and reckless that your council choose to blindly accept a pathway suggested by Supervisor Madrone, who had provided you with false information, and that you rejected the opportunity to secure professional research data and consulted a local water district that has a long history for taking good care of its customers. I hope that the alternative path will be successful, and I feel that in addition to working with the West Haven Water District, the city should invite and include the Trinidad Rancheria in that work. The Rancheria has expressed interest and has offered its help and access to resources. By working together, the city and the Rancheria have successfully completed many beneficial projects in Trinidad, and it's truly unfortunate and worrisome that there is no cooperation and engagement with the Rancheria anymore. So I encourage you to finish the government-to-government consultation policy and to reach out to the Rancheria and work to rebuild that relationship. And if you seek the Rancheria's support, then I hope that the Rancheria will treat the city better than the city has treated the Rancheria during recent events. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Homan. Other items from the floor?
Yes, this is Supervisor Madrone. Can you hear me okay?
Go ahead, Mr. Madrone.
Yes. First of all, thanks for correcting the minutes earlier tonight. I actually missed it, but I had a great conversation earlier today with your city manager, Eli NAFTA, and I thought we got that corrected. I don't believe I made any false statements there, but I appreciate that the correction provides a little clearer understanding of mutual aid and other things with fire services. But I also would like to ask that Ms. Holman, if she believes I've made false statements, then please provide the evidence. Be throwing around these slanderous statements that I've made false accusations, because I don't believe that I have. And all you've done is accuse me of something without any evidence whatsoever of what you think my false statements are. But I'm going to leave it at that. I really wish that if she thinks I've said something wrong, she would contact me or provide the details, which she has not. She just keeps providing these false statements. So that is what it is. And I never actually mentioned their property. I mentioned the details of the property, but I never mentioned any names. It was Ms. Holman that chose to bring that forward. So anyway, nothing that you as a council need to deal with, but I just wanted to set the record straight. Thank you.
Any items from the floor on non-agenda items? I don't see anybody raising their hand. All right, at this point, we will close items from the floor and move on to the consent agenda. All matters on the consent agenda are considered routine by the City Council and are enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of any of these items. If discussion is requested by any council member, that item is removed from the consent calendar and considered separately. A single opportunity for public comment on the consent agenda is available to the public. At this point, do any councilors wish to remove any items from the consent agenda? Sorry about that, folks. Any councilors wish to remove an item from the consent? All right, seeing none. At this point, I'd like to open up public comment regarding the consent agenda. Again, seeing or hearing none, and I'm looking in the chat, I'm looking for hand raising. I do see a lot of people's internet may be frozen, so I'll give it another second. Any last minute public comment on the consent agenda? All right. At this point, I would like to ask if there's a motion for the consent agenda.
I'll move that we accept the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
First by Councilman West, second by Grover. Any discussion? All right. All those, is anyone opposed to the consent agenda? No. This is a very unsatisfying process, I'm not going to lie. So seeing or hearing no opposition, that implies that the consent agenda passes. So thank you very much for that. At this point, we'll move on to our discussion action agenda items. Again, for housekeeping's sake, all of these 11 items will be a vote with a roll call vote, just so that we make sure that we are clear on the outcome and councilor's decision. So our first item this evening is the selection of the mayor. The code in the city says that the mayor is chosen by the council at the end of an election. And so at this point, I will start by simply making a statement that I wish to continue as mayor, only to continue to work on projects that I've started and been working on for the last several years. But I'm certainly open to other people's input. But I do wish to stay in this role and ask for consideration, hoping to maintain a civil environment during these meetings. Plus, I would really, really like to lead a meeting in person again in the town hall. At this point, I would also entertain other input of interest for the position of mayor.
I'd like to ask if there is other interest, because personally, I would like you to continue. I think you have a good knowledge of policy. I think you're able to conceptualize the policy and keep us, you got to keep on it with the discussion, because it does get off the rails pretty quick. So that's the attribute that I've noticed. And it allows me to concentrate on other things.
Is there any interest from other members of the council to take on the mayorship? Mr. Klompus, it looks like your hand is up.
Yeah, that wasn't to have an interest in mayor. I wanted to also support you, Steve, Mr. Mayor, to continue. I've seen you grow in this position. I've seen you in the hot seat. I've seen you under duress, and you seem to handle things well. It's almost like we need to somehow be able to differ in our opinions, but without being disagreeable with each other. And I like the way that you handle things. Certainly, I'd like to see more progress in the city, but it's not always the mayor's position or responsibility to make things happen. But I would support you and would like to see you continue in this position.
Thank you, Mr. Klompus. How about this? Is anyone going to throw their name in the hat for the mayor position besides me? All right. Thank you. I guess that means that we're going to continue as is with the mayor position. But I do believe we need to bring up the mayor pro tem position because Jack is currently holding that position. So Jack, I'd like you to start this conversation and let us know your interests in being mayor pro tem.
I would be glad to stay there. I've enjoyed the position, and so if you are okay with me staying there, I'd like to, but I'd also like to know if anybody else is interested.
Well, thank you for offering to serve again in this position. I certainly appreciate your involvement, especially because of my owning a short-term rental. There are many cases when I have to recuse myself. Plus, I just appreciate your long-term experience in the city. But does anyone else wish to throw their name in the hat for the mayor pro tem position?
I would only do it if Jack was dead set against doing it. If he had had enough, I would be willing to do it. But besides that, I think we got it's pretty good now. It's taken a couple years I've been here to start knowing people and understanding the issues myself, even after going to school for policy. So I'm happy with the way things are.
I'd like to add that I think there's all the other members of this council would be great as mayor pro tem, but I'd like to hang on another year, and I think after that, I would imagine it'd be a good time to see if anyone would like to step in and do this. We do have the three members with Quampus, Davies, and Grover. All their terms expire in 2022, so I'd like to see if they can get in and do a year's pro tem if they'd like to. But I'd like to stay on for at least another year. We're doing a lot of things going on. Appreciate it.
Tom, it looked like you were leaning forward to say something. Is that true, or okay? Well, it appears then as if we're going to remain with Jack and me in the position. I do want to take this opportunity, though, to really recognize the fact that I would say that all five of us are doing an incredible amount of in what committees and contributions to the meetings and whatnot. So while I certainly appreciate the nod to continue to run the meetings and serve as mayor, I've never really seen such an active group of city councilors, all of us doing quite a bit. So I really appreciate that. So at this point, I don't believe we need to take a vote as no one else put their name forward. So at this point, we will continue on with Jack as the mayor pro tem and Steve as the mayor. So thank you very much for that discussion and for your comments. At this point,
Congratulations.
Yeah. And I'm sorry, I did not open it up for public comment. So that, but if no one else put their name forward, there's not much to vote on. So how about this? If you want to give Jack a cake, I'll come over and steal a bite of it. How about that?
Great. And Steve, I think we're going to kick you out now, right?
Yeah. Oh shoot, yes. Item number 2, discussion decision regarding consideration of urgency ordinance number 2020-03, short-term rental stay moratorium. At this point, I am going to turn everything off. Jack, would you mind texting me when it appears as if this thing is starting to wrap up so that I can come back?
Great. All right, that'd be great. So we are considering the urgency ordinance that ends for the short-term rentals and the B&B that will end on the 14th. It's so it's the lodging ordinance, and the analysis that was given us is that the moratorium can be lifted sooner if we wish to, because we're in the red tier. It is suggested that the moratorium be lifted now 5 days early in order to allow guests to stay in the STRs on the weekend, since March 14th is a Sunday. Simply, we said when it came to red, we would come back to it and make considerations. We actually have, it says suggested action would be to end it. We could end it tonight. We could also let it go until the 14th. And of course, the last one will be we could continue the moratorium if we felt that was necessary. So those are the 3 items we have tonight. Eli, do you have anything you'd like to add to this?
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, you really summarized what I had written in the staff report for the agenda item. And then the only other fact, just that we are, like you said, we're in the red tier now, and we thought it might be helpful. I already have had at least one STR indicate that they had someone who had wanted to stay there for the past few months, and they kept moving it, and they finally moved it to this Friday, the 12th. And then once I became aware of that, I thought, since Friday is the 12th and this ends on Sunday, the 14th, that it would make sense to end it now and give the STRs an opportunity to rent this weekend if they can. And then Russ Gans is also on the line, and he had drafted the moratorium. I'll just turn it over to him in case he has some words to say.
Just briefly, as the original urgency ordinance recites, the council retains discretion to consider at any point in time the ordinance and a potential revocation or termination of ordinance by council action.
right, thank you. This is going to come back to the council, and I'd like to get responses. Richard, I think you had your hand up first, and then David.
I did. I've been watching the COVID come under more control. The fact that this moratorium is going to end in 5 days, I don't see any reason why we need to continue it any further. Whether you like having short-term rentals in Trinidad or not, I don't see this as being a reason to penalize them. I think the risk of COVID is reduced, going from the purple tier to red. And from my perspective, I feel more comfortable. There is still a state requirement of no more than 120 miles for that, but I don't see any reason why Trinidad as a city needs to have such a strict moratorium that will expire in 5 days anyway. So my support is just to eliminate it today and to terminate it and move forward. Again, whether you like short-term rentals or not, I just don't see any reason to further penalize them with the idea that it's going to prevent the transmission of the coronavirus in Trinidad. Thank you.
Go ahead.
Pretty much concur with that. I do watch the science constantly, and it seems like we're doing good. We're, as a nation, we're over 2 million a day now in vaccinations, and I can't imagine that we have a reason to keep it going further than the 14th. So that kind of goes along with Richard's reasoning. I'm fine with the suggested action of ending it tonight, but I'll listen to other people.
Tom?
Yeah, I waffle back and forth on this because the state was going to put us back in purple today, but the local health officer came up with a waiver of some sort to actually keep us in the red tier. So I don't have my mind made up exactly.
Well, we are going to make a decision pretty soon. So, and I'll just add that, we've stated that as we saw things improve, we would, and there being, still people being renting everywhere else in the county. So I think it's time. So, let's say, so I'm going to agree that I think it's time, but we should hear from the community. Is there anyone who'd like to, any public comment? You'll have to speak up, please. At this point, I don't see or hear anyone. So I think it's up to one of you to make a motion.
So I'll make that motion that we end the moratorium earlier, effective today, March 9th.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a first and a second. Any other comments? All right, then let's do a roll call vote, please, Gabe.
There he is.
Sorry, have a problem with the mute there. Okay, so let's do this. We have a motion by Grover and a second by Councilmember Thompson to end the moratorium effective today, March 9th. We'll start with Councilmember Grover.
Yes.
Councilmember Klompus.
Yes.
Davies.
Yes.
And Councilmember West.
Yes.
With Ladwig recused, that is a 4-0 vote, and the motion carries.
All right. Thank you. And Mayor Ladwig should be on the line almost immediately, and we're going to move on to number 3, which is a discussion decision regarding bid results and award for the downtown pedestrian connectivity project. And Mayor Ladwig, you're on. Are you there?
I am here. Thank you very much, Jack, for continuing with item number 2, and now on number 3, discussion decision regarding bid results and award for downtown pedestrian connectivity project. Eli, would you please give us an introduction to this agenda item, please?
Okay, so this is for the Downtown Pedestrian and Connectivity Improvement Project. And this is planning to be constructed this coming summer. The bids were publicly advertised in February the 11th, and the bid period ended last week on the 4th of March. We received 8 responsive bids, and the bids are laid out in the staff report, and it breaks down the various amounts for each bid. So we have Josh Wolf of GHD on the line, and Josh is heading the project for us. And I'll have him, announce the low bidder and talk a little bit about the process. So I'll turn it over to Josh.
All right. Thanks, Eli. Yeah, so as I said, we received 8 bids. As I presented at last council meeting, the project was structured with both base and additive alternate bid items. The way award is made, and it's described here in the staff report, basically as stipulated in the information to bidders, award is made to the lowest responsible bidder, the low bid being the lowest total of the bid price on the base contract and the additive items taken in order when added to the base contract are less than or equal to the funding amount publicly disclosed. And that funding amount was $407,000. Therefore, based on the bids received, RAO Construction is the lowest apparent bidder. That is because their base bid plus alternate 1 and 2 fit within the $407,000 budget and are the lowest bid. So our recommendation is to award the contract to RAO Construction and to authorize the city manager to execute the contract and give him the ability to authorize construction, the base contract plus any change orders up to the amount of $407,000, which is again the funding amount. We also presented the budget in the staff report. So again, this is a partially grant-funded project. It includes $435,000 of STIP money, that's the State Transportation Improvement Program funds, which are administered through Caltrans, plus a $30,000 match from the city. And the breakdown of that total funding amount of $465,000 is $407,000 for construction capital, $56,000 for construction engineering, and $2,000 for city administration time.
Do we have any questions for Josh on this this bid process? My only question for you, Josh, and this is really just more of a trying to get a context here. Is it common to have a range of bids like we did on this one? I know that to be eligible to bid a project like this, you have to be deemed eligible. You have to be deemed that you're qualified to serve a contract like this. But is it common to have such a wide range from 400 to 2.3 million? And does that say anything about the sort of the what we're getting for our money, I guess?
Well, I'd say the 2.3 million you're referring to is really the result of the bidding error. In this case, the bidder entered a extension amount, that is the total price for an item, as the unit price instead of as the extension amount. So that resulted in these erroneous bid amounts. In accordance with the way these contracts are structured, if there are discrepancies between the unit price and the extension, the unit price governs. And so therefore, we essentially have to recalculate their bid based on the numbers they entered in the form. So what you're seeing for Darren Taylor Construction, Inc. is certainly not what they intended, but that's the result of some inaccuracies in their bid. I think they thought their bid was closer to around $550,000. So the spread for the base bid is really between around 340 and 550. And, that I would say, bids certainly do vary. that range is not unreasonable, and not out of the ordinary.
And I'm certainly not making a comment on the quality of work being done by the lowest bidder. It
Sure.
caught my attention that there was such a range.
Sure.
I'm just wondering what we were getting into. So
Yeah,
any other questions? Oh, go ahead.
I'll just add a little bit that, certainly local contractors, I say, have their own specialties. And REO construction is known to be, one of the best, if not the best and most efficient at doing the type of work this project is. So I'm not surprised that they ended up with the low bid.
Very good. Thank you. Other questions or comments from the council regarding this process? All right, Josh, I'm going to open it up to public comment. Do we have any public comment regarding this agenda item? Not seeing any. We'll bring it back to council for a motion.
I'll make the motion that we accept the bid by RAO for construction authorization, the award construction contractor for the downtown Trinidad pedestrian connectivity improvement project.
I'll second that.
Before we vote, I forgot to ask a question of Josh.
Yeah, please do.
So last time we discussed this, we kind of talked about moving some of the, now I've lost it on my screen. What are those called? The alternate things or whatever they are, the three different ones. Since this puts us under, does that mean that all three get to be done?
No, as it stands right now, it would be the base bid. Certainly alternate one, which is the work on Patrick's Point Drive in front of the Chevron station. That's the sidewalk and driveway work. And then potentially alternate two. Alternate two does fit within the budget. But my proposal will be to work with the city manager, and we will decide whether or not we will award that or hold off on that. It might be nice to hold back some contingency funds and see how things go. The alternate that you were referring to at the last meeting, that was the work on Scenic. That was actually added of alternate 3, which there currently is not enough funding to cover.
Okay, yeah, I see that now with the calculations. I couldn't remember if it was 2 or 3. So
yeah,
but you're right, it is 3. Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, and again, what I'm requesting is that the city manager have the authority to execute the contract with REO and issue change orders up to the funding amount of $407,000.
All right, so we have a first and second. Can we do a roll call vote, Mr. Adams?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. So just to go over the motion real quick. We've got a motion from Councilmember Grover, seconded by Compass, to authorize the city manager to award the downtown Trinidad pedestrian connectivity improvement project to RAO Construction, Inc. and establish a maximum contract amount of $407,000. We'll start with Mayor Ladwig.
Yes.
Councilmember Compass.
Yes.
Councilmember Davies.
Yes.
Councilmember West.
Yes.
And Councilmember Grover.
Yes.
Okay, the motion carries, passes unanimously.
Thank you very much, councilors, and Josh for giving us that nice coverage. So moving on then to item number 4, discussion decision regarding establishing 2021 priorities for the Planning Commission. I believe we have Trevor on the line. Yes. Trevor, would you mind giving us an intro for this discussion item?
Sure, thank you. So pretty early on in the year, staff realized that we have a lot of things on our plate in terms of planning projects that are coming up this year, the next couple of years. So I provided a list to the Planning Commission and provided a little background on some of those, and we sort of organized all these projects into 3 broad priority tiers. It's not necessarily saying that some of the projects in lower tiers aren't important, but there are some tasks, for example, the SB 2 grant tasks. That grant money has to be spent by the end of this year. Those are tasks that really the city is obligated to do at some point anyway, and so it would be best to spend the state money while we have it. A couple of those are pretty big tasks that'll take some work. Another priority includes the general plan. So that's been going on for a long time. I think we all recognize that it's been taking a long time. The general plan is something that tends to get set aside for more shorter term projects, and then it takes time to pick it back up again, and conditions have changed. And so we have been making some good progress on that in the last few months. I'm currently working on responding to Coastal Commission comments and working with the Planning Commission on those. And then the lowest tier were kind of tasks that could be put off. They don't necessarily have deadlines. And then the second tier are projects that fall somewhere in between those. In addition, there are tasks that the Planning Commission isn't necessarily involved in, but staff is. And so it takes staff time to get those Planning Commission projects, but then there's also these other staff projects that we're working on in the background. So you can see sort of the breakdown that we're working on. So for staff tasks, the parking study, I've got that pretty much ready to go. We've got a set of surveys out for different user groups. I've done a parking inventory around town that's been interesting. And I'm working on creating data sheets for collecting the data. We do need to I want to do our first count soon before the season changes, but we are looking for more volunteers for that. You can find more information on the city's website. The water shortage contingency plan. So that was a big priority last year. We got the plan done, but now we have to put together an implementing ordinance for that. We'd want to get that done before the next dry season. The housing element, there's still a couple of loose ends to tie up with that on a staff level. That includes an LCP amendment for the emergency shelter zoning ordinance amendment that was passed, and some tribal consultation with the Rancheria on that. And then hazards planning. So that OPC grant, there's going to be some work by staff to sort of set up the public engagement plan and update the risk assessment that is supposed to occur this year. In terms of things that go to the Planning Commission, under SB2, we're looking at doing a second unit ordinance or an accessory dwelling unit ordinance. That's the ADU, to comply with state law and work with the Coastal Commission on that. Also developing new residential design guidelines to make that process a little more streamlined and a little bit more objective. And then as I mentioned, the general plan update. And then the other thing that we really can't put off are permit applications. So we got very few last year. I think people were holding off for this year. And so I've already got 5 in this year. Potentially we've got 3 on the March agenda for next week. The second tier priorities for staff tasks for continued water security and resiliency planning, and to start implementing further the OWTS program. So that's never been fully implemented through the city. Throughout the city, we do make sure everything's in order for the STRs and for property sales and transfers. And whenever anybody applies for a development permit, we make sure their septic is up to code. But if you're not in any of those categories, then it hasn't been fully implemented. Other task priorities include the STR ordinance update. So one of the things I noticed about the STR committee recommendations is that most of them, I believe, can be implemented through the administrative regulations. So the ordinance does allow the city manager to implement administrative rules and regulations. So things like fines, changing the brochure and the wording of some of those things, I believe can be implemented administratively, because it's already, because the STR ordinance, if we amend it, it still has to go through the Coastal Commission. So we're too late for that already for this season. I did send a note to Eli and Russ to get an opinion on implementing those administratively, but we are due for, or overdue for review, Planning Commission review of the ordinance. So that should be completed this year. LEAP grant tasks, so that's another housing grant. Some of the tasks are supposed to start and even be completed this year, but it has a longer timeline, so we can probably get an extension, maybe push some of those back. And then some of the public outreach for the OPC grant is also supposed to start this year. Other priorities are later LEAP grant tasks that don't have to start this year. The zoning ordinance update to implement the new general plan, which the Coastal Commission will want to have that before they certify our general plan. We've talked about a minor amendment to define a caretaker residence, and that's really just due to kind of an ongoing nuisance property at that church on West Haven. I haven't heard any complaints lately, so it's not necessarily a staff priority, but could become more critical. And then signage is an issue that comes up pretty often, and the Planning Commission has expressed an interest in working on a signage master plan. So the Planning Commission wanted to get these to the City Council, and the City Council also requested to see these. So looking for any input and feedback.
There we go. Sorry, I couldn't find the mute button. So yes, thank you, Trevor, for that. And you know, as I was reading through it, I liked your 1, 2, 3 tier approach. It gave us a sense of, you know, from your perspective, what's urgent. So I look forward to this discussion from the council and the community to see if we want to rearrange or shuffle any of these designations, first tier, second tier, third tier. So Richard, I think I saw your hand go up.
I did. Trevor, thank you for your report. I have a question, whether the report or the schedule of tasks for this year includes an update on affordable housing in Trinidad. And the reason I ask that is that we have decisions to make as a council about the number of STRs in Trinidad. And what I don't know is how affordable housing factors into that. In other words, I think the RV park in town is classified as affordable housing, but unless they're mobile homes, I'm not sure we can justify calling that affordable housing. So at some point, I guess that what I would like to know is when there'll be an update, because that affordable housing formula will help determine whether we can change dwellings into short-term rentals or should they remain housing so that people can afford to live in Trinidad. Thank you.
Yeah, that's an important issue. They're not, so they are designated as visitor services currently, but for the most part, RV parks and mobile home parks are overseen by the state, the Department of Housing and Community Development. They are not designated as affordable housing. The city's not getting any credit for them as affordable housing. It's just been recognized that they are likely providing a form of affordable housing in the city. But we haven't really looked at, you know, whether that's really, you know, adequate housing, you know, so I think that, and we don't have good definitions either of what an RV park is and how those are defined. Certainly Trinidad Bay Trailer Courts has been, I think the change happened slowly, but it's been long-term residence for a number of years. So I think it's a complicated issue. I think I think a good place, and I think we need to address it as part of the general plan update so we can consider whether those properties need to be rezoned and whether additional properties should be changed to visitor services to provide any need for visitor services. So I think talking to the owners of those parcels would be a good place to start. HCD doesn't seem to have a strong opinion either way. And I think working with the Coastal Commission, they've suggested that the city complete some sort of study of visitor services within the city's planning area so that we have a better grasp on that. But I don't have any easy answers.
I'd like to kind of piggyback on that. Thank you, Richard, for bringing that up because that was also on my list of. So RVs are classified as having wheels on the ground and temporary utilities. Mobile homes do not have wheels on the ground and have permanent utilities. So most of those places down there in the trailer park have wheels on the ground and have temporary utilities. So they don't qualify under HUD's oversight or anything like that. So I would think, I'm not sure how the state got the information that could be affordable housing, because I'm not sure they drive around and check this stuff out. Seems like that may have been, some information may have been given to them in the past that would be affordable housing. So I think I'd like to have this, it needs to be in the general plan update, because when we went to go through our short-term rental ordinance, which is an LCP amendment, there are comments in the 2017 form or response by the Coastal Commission in there that state that this is protecting housing, affordable housing stock, that trailer park down there. And so that's on page 29 of the May 19th, 2017 Coastal Commission document. And it's under responses to comments. So if they're RVs, they can be driven away at any time, and usually affordable housing cannot be driven away. So, and it does happen down there. They have, turnover. So I'd like that as, to me, that's got to be really part of this. And I was going to bring this up as part of the moratorium discussion as well. So it belongs in a couple places. I'd really like to have this sorted out. I've been asking the city manager to give me some answers on this and how we got to this point in the first place. You can't have visitor services and affordable housing in the same zone. It just doesn't make any sense, people don't live there, even though you're saying people live there, but that we got to get down to the nuts and bolts of it. The other thing I'd like to propose is that we extend the parking study through August. It's kind of a weird time to do a parking study. I guess last summer would have been great because nobody was abiding by the stay-at-home orders and we had people parking all over the place. But if it goes through August, which is our tourist season, we don't just want to target, a couple of days in June and July and call that a representative sample, I believe. Would be, and just a quick question. Were you the one walking around with the trundle wheel and okay, I didn't recognize you. I would have said hi, but after I walked down the alley, I thought, I think that was Trevor, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, that was me. I'm sort of measuring curbs between driveways and red paint to sort of get a handle on the number of parking spots, and that'll go into the report as well as be used to make the forms. You're not the first person to suggest going into August. The reason I proposed stopping it in July is we could hit the July 4th weekend and then have that parking study done in order to finalize the ADU ordinance and some other things. But it could make sense to extend it, and we could probably have some initial findings from the report and still collect another survey. So it might make sense to go that way. And I can make looking more into that issue of the trailer parks. I haven't got my head fully wrapped around it. I've talked to HCD a number of times. So from what I can tell, so HCD has the Trinidad Bay trailer courts. All the spaces are designated as mobile homes, and I understand that is the owner submitted that as their designation. I don't know if that was the original part of the plan, or if that has changed at some point over the years. There is a inspector. There is a regional representative who does annual inspections of the RV and mobile home parks, but he doesn't. He's not concerned as to whether there is an RV in a mobile home space. You might be concerned if there was a mobile home in an RV space. I'm not sure. Like I said, I've had several conversations, but I haven't got my head totally wrapped around it because it's several layers of regulation. So I would like to better understand it myself.
Yeah, maybe some photographs of to my knowledge, there's only one mobile home down there. And, if they saw fifth wheels and things with wheels on the ground and hoses supplying water and extension cords supplying power, it would maybe really clear things up with people that are in some sort of de facto decision-making position for our town. I mean, especially when we need to be deciding, how many STRs there can be or percentage of housing. We don't know how many visitors services places there are. I mean, even if the owner has designated them as mobile home spots, I mean, possession is 2/3, whatever that section is. If the sites are possessed by RVs, then obviously that's not a true statement, and things would have to be looked at. So I would appreciate you looking into that, or the city manager, whoever needs to do that as a step. Thank you.
So I'm hearing quite a bit of connection between the sort of how that area of town is designated and how that will affect the AC or the ADU ordinance and a lot of other things, Trevor. So it sounds like we've got a pretty vested interest in kind of cleaning up the designation of the trailer court. Other questions or comments from the council?
No, I just think that's a good idea to decipher that, because then would we get credit for what we need to provide with alternative dwelling units? If we segregate the park out like that, like these are the permanent residents and this is the designated actual vacation part of it, I guess.
That's a good question. I did ask at one point whether those could be considered towards the city's housing allocation. And unless they were created within the housing element period, no, they cannot. But it seems to me they're not, I don't know. It seems like if the city is going to officially allow them to be converted or portion, maybe that's a good thing to work towards, is maybe portions of the park being more permanent and portions being more transient. Should the city get some credit for that if it becomes officially designated? That's another question I don't have an answer to.
I think we get back to the tire discussion too, like Tom said, like, does it have tires on? Because is it a foundation? Like, obviously then it's not, a vacation RV. It is a permanent dwelling once you get into that. So, okay, that clarified it somewhat.
I'd like to add to that. I just continue with this conversation, even though I have something else I want to ask. Trevor, aren't there examples, even in Humboldt County, of these trailer parks and what other cities have done with them? To get clarification.
Good question. I'll look into that. That would be a good avenue to investigate. I think, and I'm sure this has come up in the coastal zone too. So I do have a a phone call scheduled with our local coastal commission staff person tomorrow on another topic, and I'll see if I can bring this one up as well.
I think the
The other thing I wanted to ask,
off Indianola might give you a good sort of comparison. I believe it's still in the coastal zone, and it's also it appears to be in a similar kind of situation to the one that we have here. So, just a suggestion. Other Jack, you said
now I want to, yeah, a couple things. First, I'm very impressed with what you put together. It seems like, Trevor, you guys are loaded with things to do. Is it as tough as it looks? Is there any way we can get help to you? Is there anything we can do to try to move these along?
Yeah, I think, you know, we did lose a planner last year that was helping me with Trinidad stuff. But we do have other help in our office, and we're looking to hire another planner. But I think in terms of the council is just helping us keep on track with these priorities and keeping some of these end goals in mind. You know, we got to meet these grant requirements, and you know, try not to let us get off on tangents, you know, because things will come up during the year, and so kind of just keeping these things in mind and just supporting us in what are the continued priorities.
Thank you for the good work you're doing. I'm impressed.
Thank you.
I had one more comment or question. Would it be possible, you mentioned that you were responding to Coastal Commission comments and such on the general plan, if those were forwarded to the council so that we can also read the comments, and then hopefully that will shorten our discussion times. If we know what the comments are ahead of time and responses to them, we don't have to maybe spend 4 hours at a city council meeting clarifying things if we have a background knowledge.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I suspect that the making of the list of priorities and the tiers, whatnot, may have helped you organize your thoughts, because it seems that you're considering both sort of the inertia that results from city interests, from public comments and such, coupled with the timeline of when grants are expiring and whatnot, has really helped. I'm really glad to hear that you have another planner to help with the OWTS. I know that ebbs and flows. And I was also glad to hear, again, now in the public record, that if you don't do anything, you're, in terms of development or any kind of remodel or whatever, your permit can go unchecked for years. And it's really, we really need to get a handle on that, because we found ourselves in a tough situation before when septic systems were failing near watersheds and whatnot. So really, I think my suggestion would be to follow your own advice with the tiered approach, because it seems to include all this. I am hearing a little more importance be put on the zoning and whatnot of the trailer court, so that we can have a more fruitful discussion about ADUs and about all the different things that we're talking about. So do we have any closing comments from the council before I open it up for public comment? All right, let's go to public comment regarding the priorities of the Planning Commission. Hopefully you have the packet in front of you so you can see the very detailed coverage of this topic for reference. But do we have any public comment regarding the Planning Commission goals and priorities for the next year?
I have a comment. This is Dorothy Cox.
Go ahead, Dorothy.
Yeah, I listened to the parking survey information, and I've read it. I want to know how many people got this information, the information I got on my email from Gabe, I'm assuming, or from Angela, actually. But does everybody in town get the same email asking for volunteers, giving them the information, saying what's going to happen? I realize, Trevor, this is important to you, and it's important to the city because of a lot of issues we have, especially once Memorial Weekend hits. But I'm going to consider volunteering for this parking survey because I walk every day and I pretty much know where every car is parked every single day of the week. But one issue that stood out to me and my friend Mary as we walk is that you mentioned putting flyers on visitors' cars so that visitors or non-residents can give their opinion. May I strongly urge you not to do that. Please don't do that in our town. Put flyers on windows of cars. It's just one more thing to pick up as the wind blows. There's got to be a different way to do it. Perhaps information to the vacation rentals, to their visitors, some other way. Please don't put flyers on windows. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cox. Other comments from the public regarding the priorities for the Planning Commission? All right, hearing none. Do we need?
But I didn't get an answer. I didn't get an answer, Steve. I want to know how the residents of Trinidad have this information.
Oh,
if
I'm
I
sorry.
got it, I need to know that everybody got it. If we're going to do a survey, let's include as many residents as we can. Even if I have to walk door to door and knock on doors and hand them, I would do that. But to just willy-nilly send it to the people on one email list, I haven't even seen it posted at the post office or the store. I'd like to know how everybody's going to know about it in a timely fashion.
Yeah, and we have talked about that, and maybe Gabe can add. So I know the email went out. We also did work on some notices to be posted around town, and then I believe there was also a note to go on the water bill. I don't know if that's gone out on the water bill yet or not.
Oh, that's a start. Everybody gets a water bill, so that would be the place to do it.
Does that work for you, Dorothy?
Well, I just said that's a very good idea. I would like every resident to be able to get this information. That's the process that we need to follow. And thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Any other public comment regarding the priorities? All right, we'll bring it back to council. I don't believe we need a vote on this, but Trevor, do you feel like you have a good sense of the wishes of the council?
Yeah, it sounds like there's general agreement on the priorities, but we're going to add the RV park status as a priority task under the general plan update.
Sounds good. Well, thank you again for the coverage of this topic. And we will move on to item number 5, which is discussion decision regarding amending TMC ordinance, election of Planning Commission chair and vice chair to allow both positions to serve multiple terms. Eli, I believe this would be something for you to introduce.
Okay. Let me adjust my volume here. Okay. Yeah, for this item, at the last Planning Commission, and Trevor's still on the line, so I'll turn it over to her in a moment. But at the last Planning Commission meeting, they were talking about the fact that the election of the chair of the Planning Commission and the vice chair is different than the process that's utilized for the council. And they would like to make it similar to the council. Currently, it reads that the commission shall elect its chair and vice chair from among the appointed members, and the chair of the Planning Commission shall be elected to a 2-year term on a rotating basis so that no individual may serve a second term as chair as long as there are others on the commission who have not served. And part of the concern was the fact that there's turnover with the Planning Commission, and with that language, it might end up where someone who just joined the Planning Commission all of a sudden becomes the chair of the Planning Commission. And they felt that it's a position that's better served with people that have been on there for a little while before they become chair or vice chair. So I'll turn it over to Trevor and she can add to that.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good summary. It's something that it hasn't become a real problem. We've had a couple of new planning commissioners who have been able to fill that role or had experience as previous planning commissioners. But it's felt like it's kind of could be a problem for several of our last elections of chairs. And so and it's not consistent with how the city elects the mayor. But like I said, we don't have maybe the language still encourages a rotating basis, but if there's no one else who's qualified or wants to serve, someone can serve another term. So that would be my suggestion.
All right, questions for Trevor regarding this agenda item from the council? Yeah, go ahead, Richard.
Yeah, just a note. There's most of the city, in many ways, committees are run by volunteers, and I've noticed that sometimes it's hard to get people to volunteer and make a commitment to work on a committee or do a project. So I understand the shortage of people, and this change of the ordinance, or at least to the makeup of the committee, just simply makes sense in an area where we just can't get huge numbers of people to volunteer. I think it's a good idea, and it makes perfect sense.
All right, other comments for Trevor or questions?
I would go with their recommendation because the people that are serving there, I noticed that too, and I think we should be consistent with that. And we don't want to put somebody in an uncomfortable position that doesn't have experience just because of wording in an ordinance, and it doesn't say that they don't encourage. I like that they still encourage the rotation, but I think that's important too. So no real questions, more just concurring with their desire to update the ordinance.
All right, I'm going to bring it out to public. Any public comment on the rules governing the chair and vice chair of the Planning Commission? All right, not seeing any. Let's bring it back to council. Do we have a motion to follow the recommendation to adapt the rules governing selection of chair and vice chair for the Planning Commission?
Yeah, I'll make a motion to direct staff to prepare an ordinance amendment to 2.20.070. Election of chair and vice chair.
We have a first from Grover and a second from Klumpus. Gabe, can we do a roll call vote for this, please?
Can we just clarify what the amendment would be? Is it just to say if somebody would, get rid of the may not serve and say may serve another term?
They're going to bring us back the amendment, and then we're going to vote, as far as I'm understanding this.
Say that again, David?
They're gonna bring us back an amendment to vote on once they get the language correct, is my understanding.
Okay. I guess I missed that. Thanks for clarifying.
Well, real quick, I thought I saw a recommendation for the language.
I didn't see anything.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was thinking the section in italics was the recommendation, but it's really rotating basis, so no individual. Yeah, so I see. So we need to. Can we just make a motion with the suggested language just to be more efficient with our time, or leave it to a consent agenda at a future meeting?
Well, the recommended action is to direct the staff to prepare an ordinance amendment.
Yeah.
It's really the outcome of this discussion.
Yep. You're right.
So let's keep with the original.
If I may add, so that's one option. The other option is simply to remove so there's the first sentence, which is all by itself, and then the second sentence up and through the word two-year term. And if you remove the remainder of it on a rotating basis so that no individual may serve a second term as chair as long as there are others on the commission who have not so served, if you remove that, that's one way to approach it.
Well, it's still got to come back to us, though, right? It still has to be written and come back to us.
Okay, yeah, that's true. We'll get the whole ordinance in place. So,
I think Steve's
okay.
idea of bringing it back
That way
on
we're not
consent just might
kind
be
of winging
right
it
off
here
that
and
word.
hoping that it turns out right.
All right, so with the motion is to direct staff to amend the ordinance as recommended, and we'll bring it back to consent. So
Yes, I'll second
we
that.
have a first and we have a second. Gabe, can you do a roll call vote for us, please?
Yes, sir. We'll get right to the vote. Let's do Council Member Clumpus,
Aye, yes.
Council Member Davies,
Aye.
Council Member West,
Yes.
and Council Member Grover,
Yes.
and Mayor Ladwig.
Yes.
Motion carries, passes unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Moving on to the long-awaited presentation from the Trails Committee for its annual report. I just want to not really make light of this, but it has been now, I think, 3 attempts to make this presentation happen due to weather and extended meetings. So I look forward to a presentation from our Trails Committee.
All right, thank you. So I think we'll need a shared screen here for that. And I have the presentation, so if it's easier for me to share, I'm happy to try that.
Probably be best, Tom, if you could, because then you can advance the slides when you need to.
Okay.
Unless they come up.
Here comes, Gabe's got it. Excellent. Thank you, Gabe.
All right.
Okay, so the Trinidad Trails Committee is a committee I serve on as chair, and we discuss issues that come up with the trails in town, such as maintenance, closure, etc. We would like to, one of our big accomplishments for the past year and a half or whatever was trying to come up with a Trinidad policy for the trails in Trinidad, a policy document that would help guide how trails are maintained, formed, etc. So, okay, I'm ready for the next one there, Gabe. Thanks. All right, so as you can see, the vision statement. So this was written back in 2017, I think, when the committee came into formation. Prudent preservation and maintenance of the pedestrian trail system in and around Trinidad be the primary, and another would be the further acquisition of land and partnerships to expand and connect pedestrian trail systems throughout the city and its surrounds. So currently our committee members are myself, Planning Commissioner Cheryl Kelly. We have a positions opening for 2 city residents, open for 2 city residents, one of which is occupied by Gail Kenny. The other is vacant. Trinidad Rancheria has a representative. Their primary is vacant, but Shirley Louse has done an outstanding job of always coming to these meetings as the alternate. The Eureka tribe has a representative, and Frankie Myers, alternate Rosie Claiborne. And visitor services business is vacant. It used to be occupied by the Trinidad Coastal Land Trust, and I believe we'll be addressing that on the next agenda item. And tonight we just approved another position for the Shirai Ancestral Society. So the Trails Committee charter was established as a subcommittee in 2017. Council unanimously approved the charter and the committee composition. And the primary function is to advise the city council, staff, and planning commission on matters relating to policies affecting trails in the city of Trinidad. Okay, so we serve in an advisory capacity to the council, commissions, or city staff, not in a decision-making capacity, which sometimes the public may get confused. So it's purely advisory. And our job is to make recommendations to city staff on the management, maintenance, and repair of trails. And then it's the city's responsibility to carry these out. And we also, if we're called upon, could make advisory recommendations during environmental review process on projects that may involve or affect trails in the city of Trinidad. And I can't see the rest of it. Number 4, yes, and most importantly is to provide a forum for the community to reach out during our meetings and provide some sort of outreach and education. We meet on a quarterly basis, and our next regularly scheduled meeting will be in April. So here's a map of our city trail system. Blue indicates the coastal trail, which goes all the way down the California coast. It winds in places on roads when it cannot be available to the coastline via a trail. And then there are some trails on here that are on state parks land, I believe. It's always kind of a question as to where ours end and state park trails begin. But this is an overview of the trail system in the city of Trinidad. Next. Okay, so these are some of the documents that we try to refer to when we are recommending maintenance, etc. The current general plan, which is 1980, so we're working on that right now. Draft conservation, open space, and recreation element, draft circulation element of the general plan. There's a 2001 draft Trinidad Trails plan. There's a Trinidad Head vegetation management guidelines that were developed in 2011. And there's a Coastal Commission memo that helps guide that, and a Planning Commission staff vegetation report. And there is a Trinidad Head Study Committee final report that helps guide maintenance on Trinidad Head. And maps and Trinidad Recreation and Trails map, which you just saw on the last slide. All right, so moving ahead, we had some priorities, and one of them was the Axel Lindgren Memorial Trail. This was the priority in 2019, and it has not been achieved yet. So we wanted to keep this as a priority. The toe of the trail on the beach needs maintenance. Can you slide that up just a tad, Gabe? That slide.
You can decrease the magnification if you use your cursor to the left of the screen.
To the left. Oh, thank you. I'm not used to this. I'm pretty good at Zoom, but this is something new. Oh, wonderful. All right. This makes a totally different picture. Thank you, Richard. So like I said, we would like some kind of a plan to fix this, like the cable steps. It's always an ongoing thing, but it's almost straight down there right now. So we were waiting for that to be looked at by the council and accomplished. And the trailhead, which is always under scrutiny, that would need to be looked at as well. I have not yet seen the new plan for that area where the Memorial Lighthouse used to sit. So it would probably be a good idea if we had that in some kind of an overall planning model for the trail. Okay, next. Thank you. All right, so Trinidad Head, the access has kind of become de facto up the paved road, when in fact the official access is up the steps in the southeast corner of the parking lot on the city's easement. So replace, repair trailhead stairs. There used to be a sign down there. It has long since disappeared. So some kind of a trailhead signage. A regular maintenance schedule, which in the past few years, I've seen that regular maintenance has been ongoing on the head, and continue implementation and assessment of the vegetation plan. That was in 2019. So not all of the recommended improvements were accomplished, so we're carrying over to 2021. Priority 3, signage. Implement a uniform signage plan, identify trail signage budget, and install trail signage. And once again, that was 2019. And so that's being carried over to 2021 with developing and implementing a uniform trail signage plan, so everything is the same. Install wayfinding signage. Where does the trail start? Consolidate and update advisory signage, and you'll be seeing some examples of this in some upcoming slides. An updated interpretive sign that's found on the head. The Trinidad Coastal Land Trust, I believe, co-funded this in the first place. It's been damaged. It's up where the trail peels off from the first hard turn on the pavement on Trinidad Head. And then remove dated illegal signage and signs that are irrelevant. So one thing that's probably a glaring omission from this is the Van Wyck Trail. When we were doing all of this, the Van Wyck Trail was being worked on as part of a plan, and then it was closed, and then there's an appeal. So that is one reason why it has been left off of this. The city council is well aware of that situation and the need for some type of resolution. So that's why it is not on this presentation. So now we move on to signage recommendations. So we'd like install trail entrance signs for the Axel, Lindgren, Parker Creek, and Trinidad Head trails. Inventory trail posts to determine if additional posts are needed. So if you walk around town, there are 4x4s with routed directional signage, etc. At some trails, but not all. Somehow we would like to leverage volunteers for regular maintenance of trail posts and possibly the trail. And on these posts, add some California Coastal Trail insignias on the appropriate posts, as you would see up at, you see these up at Patrick's Point State Park on some of their trails. Utilize some of the existing stones as commemorative markers. So some of these exist at the Parker Creek Trail down, and there's one on the corner of Van Wyck and Galindo, where the trail goes down the hill on the steps. And develop a uniform wayfinding design plan. So that's been talked about, like GPS marks or apps or things like that in the future, some sort of technology. Okay, so next, Gabe, so here are some examples of signage. So on the left, we have the Parker Creek Trail rock with the sign on there. We also have another Parker Creek Trail sign, and then at the bottom left corner, you see another trailhead sign. I believe that's the one that might go down to the Galindo Trail. So they're all different, and so we would like to see different ways. And so you see the Galindo Trail, this is at the base down by the Launcher Beach Drive. And then these are the posts in the right-hand corner that we're talking about. So one or two of these would be preferable. So that would be something that we would like the city to look at so that we can have a uniform presentation of what people can look for when they go to signs and go to trails. Next, please. So these are different ideas. We haven't discussed any of these as a trailhead, as a trail advisory committee yet. These are options that the city council could look at, or, you know, going from large to small. We've had many discussions that maybe the posts would be the way to go since they are less obtrusive visually. So there's some ideas. Next, please. Some examples of advisory signage on the left-hand side. These are the different ones that we have as a smattering across the city. They're not visually attractive. They have, you do not really know what to look for on these because nothing is uniform. Some are permanent sort of signs. Some are stapled to road barriers. We're looking more at something on the right-hand side. The 4x4s are very eloquent in how you can put many different advisories on one of these signs, and they also have the beauty of aligning with national park type signage and state park type signage, so it's uniform with everything around our area. And then on the left-hand side, you see a interpretive signage that's falling down by the Marine Lab. And then this is something that's under question. I believe it might be on state park property. And the one below it is the trailhead, is the interpretive signage at the top of the pavement going up Trinidad Head. So here are some just ideas next to it. It is not the recommendation of the trail committee, and if anyone else from the trail committee is on here and I'm misspeaking, please feel free to step in. But not to have many of these around town, only strategic locations for interpretive signs. And also our goal is to get rid of some illegal signs. Like there are signs in town that make people think that they cannot walk down certain trails, such as over by the Wagner Trail. There are signs that are misleading on that road and at that trailhead. And then this is an option for a very large option for a kiosk that would be maybe an overarching thing somewhere in town, maybe at the base of the Trinidad Head. We haven't totally fleshed this out. Saunders Park, somewhere where it wouldn't be obtrusive on a bluff, but somewhere where people could get some information. Okay, I think, is that the last one, Gabe? I think that's it.
Yep, that's it.
Yep, that's the last one. Thank you very much. So that's a down and dirty, quick presentation. You know, it's been months since we put this together. I guess our overarching desire for the council would be to use the line item budget we have, which is $10,000, to immediately attack some pressing maintenance issues, such as the tow of the Axel Lindgren Trail, the steps leading up to Trinidad Head, some sort of idea to, if the Van Wyck Trail is ever determined to be open again. So that has taken up a lot of our discussion along with the policy. We have the policy went to the Planning Commission, and the City Council will see that at some point to ratify, but that wasn't the gist of our presentation, because general users could care less about the Trinidad Trails policy. They just want to be able to walk on the trails and know where they are. So any questions, the council? Yes, Richard.
I just want to make a few comments. Tom, thank you for the report. Very well done. I do want to point out, as you mentioned on the city trails map, that the Van Wyck Trail isn't mentioned and the Galindo Trail is not mentioned either.
Yeah, those are, we talked about this as a committee, and those are part of the beach trails, like a conglomerate, like an overarching designation going from Edwards down to the beach, down Van Wyck, down Galindo, and to the beach.
Okay. And the other comment I wanted to make is that because the Edward Street connectivity project didn't go through, I struggle at times with the Van Wyck Trail. I understand the position of the Yurok and the Churai peoples because of the ancestral part of their land and the cultural connectivity. But I also get concerned about citizens walking down Edwards and going around that marine, the marine lab curve, and just waiting for someone to get knocked off. I have just a very difficult time trying to not upset really cultural observers and the history of the land. But at the same token, I don't want to see people get hurt walking down Edwards to get to the beach. So I personally struggle with that. But I would hope that this year, when the government-to-government mechanism framework comes into being, that we can figure out a way to sit down and work this out and come up with a solution that benefits everyone and is able to satisfy cultural sensitivities and requirements as well. Thank you.
And yeah, I don't want to get too far into that too, but I have concerns too living on Edward Street. I stop traffic literally maybe 8 out of 10 times. Traffic has to stop every time I get out of my car. So there is an issue there. I feel like my dog's gonna get hit when he jumps out of the car too, which would very upset. Well, it's not even my dog, but it would upset me. But thank you very much for this, Tom. You had a lot of good ideas, and I like the concept of a general area that shows what our signage is. So when people get like in a kiosk setup, and then when they get it, they know what they're looking for with the little posts that aren't as invasive. That's my feelings on it at this point, because you had a lot of good, nice style things there that would be attractive to and updated rather than a bunch of stuff that you showed. There was a big variety there, and I could see how people would get confused on where to go and what shape the trail's even in, really, and some of them. So,
Yeah,
thanks
it
again.
would be nice. And I think Cheryl Kelly did a nice job of bringing together a lot of examples. And I would be remiss if I didn't thank Shirley Laus for putting together the presentation. She's the one who made the PowerPoint program. So,
well, yeah, it's good.
Jack.
I'd like to just, I worked for the committee, and I just want to compliment all of them. This has been a really outstanding committee. These people put in a lot of work and a lot of reading to get through the policy and then come back and do all this work. So this is a great job, and Tom's been a good leader. So just want to compliment you on all the work you're doing, and hopefully we can see some nice changes over the next year.
Yeah, thanks, Jack. I'm sorry I didn't. You're the alternate, so when I'm not around, Jack is the representative for the city, and Gail Kenny is the co-chair. So
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
Thanks.
Steve, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, I was just gonna. Yeah, I mean, it would be. I feel silly if I didn't recognize the hard work, but everyone's already done it. But it is obvious, and really, I would like to at this point recommend that city staff start working on a plan to spend that $10,000 that's allocated, or at least tap into it and repair those two really critical pieces that you mentioned: the foot of the Axel Lindgren Memorial Trail and the trailhead of the trailhead of Trinidad Head, because those are liabilities and they're unsightly. So I would urge us to direct city staff just to get started on that. And I know that there's lots of ideas that have come out of the Trails Committee in terms of a workforce. I'm curious, and just anyone can weigh in on this. Are we setting ourselves up for any kind of liability when we have volunteers, either with trail maintenance or anything like that? And I think it's a great idea for citizen involvement and a healthy workforce. I just wanted to make sure that we were considering that, and we don't have to get into the weeds now, but and then the signage. I like the idea of a uniform set of signs, and I like modeling it after the state parks and national parks. And I would hope that we could also sort of Trinidadify it enough, because we have state parks to the north and south. Even just going out to Elkhead, those are state park signs. We could just make sure that people know when they're on Trinidad signs, even just with coloring, right? Or some kind of little logo or something like that. But really fantastic work, and it's long overdue. A little embarrassed that I've been on the council since 2019 when the recommendations came in, and we're just dusting them off for 2021. So I'm hoping that we can start checking these things off instead of just talking about them.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, there are ways to do the volunteer thing which need to be explored, but the liability thing always comes up. But you know, the Hammond Trail is maintained by volunteers on a great, you know, on a large prospect. So, you know, maybe reaching out to that group and figuring out how they've circumvented being sued into the next century. You know, if somebody gets a blister, then we
Well,
could
and the
fix
land
that.
trust
Sign waivers.
is removing all kinds of vegetation and doing some heavy trail work too. So it's just something that, as long as we're thinking about it, I think it would be a great way for folks to get involved. So.
Yep. Okay. Public
Any
comment?
further questions or comments for our Trails Committee? Any public comment regarding the Trails Committee presentation? All right, a relatively quiet group tonight. Moving on then, thanks again for that. Oh, do I see, did someone trying to make a comment?
Gail, I wanted to say something.
There you are,
My
Gail.
video won't start, but yeah, I just really wanted to encourage the city to get on fixing the steps at the bottom of the Axel Lindgren Trail. That's way overdue. So we'd really like to see that happen in the next 6 months.
Excellent.
Thank you.
You bet. All right, moving on then to number 7, discussion decision regarding Trails Committee appointments. I have to go to my agenda. Annual report. Who's going to introduce this one? I'm drawing a blank here.
I think this is Eli.
Okay, yeah, I can introduce it, and then whoever wants to weigh in. So as far as the Trail Committee appointments, we currently have one vacancy for the general public representative, but no applicants at the moment. And we currently have a visitor services / business community representative vacancy that Carol Vandermeer's applied for, and that's attached to this agenda item. So we can consider appointing her to the position. And then we need to reach out to the Churai Ancestral Society and ask them who they would like to nominate as a representative, and we can bring that to our next meeting. So that's what I have, and the recommended action is to fill the vacancy on the Trail Committee and direct staff to extend the recruitment process so that we can get another general public representative.
All right, do we have, is Carol on the call? I don't see her name.
I didn't see
Any
her.
discussion regarding the letter of interest from Carol Vandermeer?
Carol has attended some of our meetings, at least one. We've started since we met on a really rigorous basis for quite a while, and now we're trying to get back to the original schedule of quarterly. So she came, I don't remember when it was, maybe back in November, and expressed interest. She's the director of the Humboldt County, or not Humboldt County, the Humboldt Coastal Land Trust.
Trinidad
Coastal Land Trust, thank you. And she seems very interested, and the person that vacated Ben Moorhead was also from the land trust, so it seems like a logical transition to have the land trust in this position. So I would highly recommend that we approve Carol Vandermeer to this position.
Is that that sounds like a motion, actually.
Well,
I'll second it.
we need some public
Unless
comment.
somebody else wants to talk.
We need public comment.
Yeah, I was just clarifying. So yeah.
I'll bring it back as a motion.
My default position.
Any public comment regarding the appointment of Carol Vandermeer to the Trails Committee? All right, seeing none, I'll bring it back to the council.
I move to accept Carol Vandermeer's application to be a member of the Trinidad Trails Committee.
I'll second it.
All right, can we do a roll call vote, Gabe?
We have a motion to recommend appointing Carol Vandermeer from the Trinidad Coastal Land Trust to fill the visitor service and business community representative position, and we will start with Ladwig.
Yes.
Councilmember Klumpus.
Yes.
Councilmember Davies.
Yes.
Councilmember West.
Yes.
And Councilmember Grover.
Yes.
The motion carries, passes unanimously.
Thank you, Gabe. And moving on then to item number 8, discussion decision regarding draft resolution 2021-02, establishing a water advisory committee. So, Mr. Naffa, can you take this over, please?
Certainly. So at the last council meeting on February 9th, the city council directed staff to form what I'm calling a water advisory committee. There was the name suggested as a water resiliency committee. So the title that I put in here for now is a placeholder, and this is all a draft agenda item, would be to call it the Water Advisory Committee, since it seems to have a wider scope that it can encompass a broad range of water issues. And the council can choose a different title if they feel it would be appropriate. The Water Advisory Committee can consider and request additional data on alternative solutions to address the water needs of the city. And the council can give direction on concepts to be explored to determine their feasibility. And then the committee can advise the council on the feasibility of various concepts. The composition of the Water Advisory Committee in the draft resolution that's attached is, number one, intended to not create too cumbersome of a body that would make it difficult to meet and to fit everyone's schedule on a regular basis. As a result, it's a slim committee. The draft resolution suggests that the Water Advisory Committee consists of 2 members of the City Council and 1 member of the Planning Commission. Those 3 would be the voting members. And then 2 additional committee members could be the city engineer and the city manager. And the committee can always invite attendees to the meetings depending on topics addressed. And in addition, anyone can attend the meeting without being required to be a member of the committee. People such as Supervisor Steve Madrone's input, also our City Public Works Director and the staff, their input, and representatives and residents from Trinidad and the greater area are welcome. The reason we didn't put like any public members is that, at least in putting this together, I wanted to have it something that, you know, they can meet on a regular basis and we won't have to be burdened with the fact of, well, you know, we have, you know, let's say 5 members or 7 members and we're trying to coordinate their schedules and we got to do a doodle poll and everything. So I'm hoping to have something that is versatile and can meet on a regular basis as determined by the committee and the needs of the council. And then at the same time, So as far as the Water Advisory Committee, there would be 3 voting members and they'd all be Trinidad residents. So as a result, the 2 council members are automatically Trinidad residents. And then the 1 planning commission member, it would be suggested that would be a Trinidad resident also. And then the city engineer and the city manager, I would be there to help for continuity. And then the city engineer, I was thinking would be good to be there because of the fact that hopefully we can be addressing a variety of different solutions, such as sources of water, collection, distribution, storage of water, tanks and pipes and so on. So I thought the city engineer would be a good person to have because at the meeting, they could weigh in on the feasibility of some of these things instead of the committee wasting a lot of time coming up with concepts and then finding out from the engineers that that's not feasible or, or maybe we should change it, do something with it. So I'm hoping for something that can just keep moving along and make some progress and make some good recommendations. In addition to that, speaking to our Public Works Director who runs the water plant, Ryan, he could be on the committee as well, again, as non-voting, but he has expressed an interest that he could attend the meetings. I initially did not have his name on there because I know that between the work that they do during the day and then he has to oversee the plant also on the weekends, I didn't realize if he would have enough time to dedicate to this, but he said that he would make the time. So, I'm glad to have him on there as maybe the city engineer and the public works director instead of my name, but I'd be there anyway. So the main thing is having the 3 voting members, and then the other couple members would be basically staff oriented that have some technical experience that they could share with the rest of the committee so that we can stay on track and actually get some things accomplished. And in the resolution that I have, the draft resolution, it follows the pattern that we have for both advisory committees that are current, the Trails Committee and the STR Committee. Under committee membership, I made a typo. I was doing this on Friday, my normal day off, and I was preparing a bunch of agenda items. But on the 3rd line, I just have a sentence that says the city engineer and the city manager, period. Now I know that I had put in shall be non-voting members of the committee, but for some reason when the last version was saved, it got that portion deleted. And that's what ended up in your packet. So I'll turn this over for any questions from the council.
I don't have any questions. Do you want to go, Richard? I have more of a.
You go first. Go ahead.
All right. Well, I just want to throw my hat in there. Did get an environmental science degree a couple of years ago. Did do watershed management. I have been to Costa Rica studying some of these systems. Last year I did reach out to Supervisor Madrone, but we never got to connect. So hopefully that would happen now, and we could start getting ahead of this a little bit. Because I understand the physics of it and some of the policy behind it. So I'd like to, put my hat in the ring for this one.
Richard?
Yes, Eli, I have a question. Bryce Kenny had sent an email in to the council, and one of the questions he had was whether it's advisable to have the city engineer on the committee. My question would be, what type of expense would that add to someone? Is that a $200 an hour consulting fee for someone to be on? Or is it better for the committee to come up with some specific ideas and then bring the engineer in and say, we'd like your feedback on these specific ideas versus having him or her attend the meetings? My question is really about a fee structure and whether it's better to have the engineer at every meeting or have the engineer on call to provide feedback for what this committee brings up.
That's a good point. And as you could tell, at least with our council meetings, the way we handle it with consultants is that we try to have the city attorney the city engineer, the city planner, and so on towards the front end of the meeting, just so this way, we don't have to tie up too much of the meeting with their costs. But again, their expertise is always valuable. So one option, since we do have this current WebEx technology pretty soon to be followed up with Zoom technology in the coming weeks, that we could possibly just have the city engineer join us like at a beginning of a meeting, and remotely, and, as a suggestion. And then, if need be, sometimes we can have them physically come to the meeting. Otherwise, maybe we could just have them, not attend every meeting, and maybe just have the Public Works Director in place on that position. So again, it's in a draft concept. Those are legitimate concerns. I just wanted the committee, at least from my viewpoint, to be as productive as possible. And I thought that if we start going on some tangents that are not feasible, and then find out from the engineer that that we should have been looking at something else. And a lot of times the engineer can weigh in, like as we're talking on that particular item, throw in like a number of factors that are worthy of consideration. So maybe based upon the agenda of the proposed meeting, we can identify a few things that the city engineer, after he looks at the agenda, can say, I think I could weigh in on such and such, and then keep that time limited. Again, this is in a draft concept, so it's fluid. So, but that is a legitimate point that Bryce made and that you brought forward.
Other
Right.
council? Go ahead, Jack.
I'd like to just ask, part of our water is outside of our city, and I realize we want to make decisions about, have our own city people make decisions about this. I think that's a good idea, but do we want to have a member that is outside of it, or be able to have a member outside of the city, but still within the water district?
Well, again, that could be up to the council to decide. I just felt, at least as far as voting members of the committee, like I said, I was suggesting having like the city engineer and the myself to be non-voting members. And then maybe we could, ask for someone who is outside the city limits to be a non-voting member. Otherwise, if you want, the council feels that it would be helpful, have someone from outside. We don't have any public members that are not, that are from the city, other than the people who are from the council and from the planning commission. So if we did have maybe one public position, if you want, that's fine. Just coming from the water area that we serve, and if they happen to be in the city, outside the city, whatever. I just hate to designate one position just for that, where that's a small number of our water users. So again, especially voting, we can have them as non-voting, but I'm thinking for voting members, I feel it's probably better if we focus more on the city. But again, it's up to the council. We're in the draft form.
Yeah, and the other part of this, the other thing I wanted to add is I just want to stress that we really need to be bringing in people like Steve Madrone and someone from the various other districts. We have other areas that are very concerned about the water in the area, and I really would like to make sure that we're putting out invitations and trying to get people to come to these meetings that are outside the area for their concerns and their input too. So we were working. One of the things we wanted to do, I think, was to be working together on water issues with everyone as one, since we're all within this water area that is a concern. So I just would like to make sure we keep invitations out there and we try to make sure everybody gets an opportunity to come to the meetings.
And I agree, and I had that as that last sentence in there, the supervisor Steve Madrone's input, and I said Public Works, and then representatives and residents from Trinidad and the greater Trinidad area are welcome. And in other words, just like we have right now at the meeting, we have Steve Madrone and a number of concerned residents. I think that would be ideal. they can attend the meetings on a regular basis. It's just that I was focusing on who the voting members would be. But certainly the expertise of Steve Madrone as far as water, and then some other people who are in the greater area who have good water expertise, would be welcome. And at the same time, I wanted to have our city engineer and probably the public works director present too, to just focus also on the feasibility of, some of the various possibilities that we can pursue and concepts and so on.
I think I would like to urge the council to consider adding the public works director to this small group, and one resident who is a water customer, who's benefiting from the water situation in Trinidad, just to have that broad coverage, not to make it too big, but to make sure that we have a nice even coverage. And I agree that bringing in the city engineer is crucial, but as a member of the committee, because I think it'll force the committee, in essence, to be more intentional with the involvement of the city engineer, because he has a lot to offer, and we just want to be sort of mindful of our resources. That would be my input on this. I don't know if anyone has any thoughts on those two additions.
I do.
Good.
So, yeah, I think using contracted positions should be discretionary. They shouldn't be coming to the meetings as a committee member. I'm sure they'd be happy to do that for the income that they could generate for their business. But I think that part of this also should be looking at I know that West Haven Community Services District has approached the city about an intertie for emergency situations such as fire, etc. Dave Hankin, who sits on that board, is very interested in being part of this committee. I think it would be very useful to have the knowledge of someone who helps run another water system. Steve Madrone is very interested, and he's on the call, so I won't put any words in his mouth. I'll let him speak for himself. But I think we shouldn't get too hung up on voting members. It is an advisory committee. What we do sometimes at the Trails Committee is just consensual recommendations. Individual people bring in their recommendations and see what we can do. We're not going to make any decisions with this committee that are hard and fast. The city council has to approve everything. And I think it would be very important to bring in a public member. And, Eli did bring up this technology of video conferencing, which will make it easier for people to perhaps free up some of their time. But, this has been a really big discussion point in our community. And I think by not giving a public member of the public a seat on the committee is really doing a disservice to our community by just saying you can come whenever you want. So I would highly suggest the 2 members of the council, I think, is a great idea. The planning commissioner, I think someone from the West Haven Community Services District. We have someone who's expressed interest. If we're going to be working with them at some point and at some kind of a tie together, I think that's crucial. And a member at the minimum within the city limits. And I also like the idea of the planning commission representative being a resident of the city as well. And then Bryce brought up and Jack brought up maybe someone outside, but I know that seems to be a more cumbersome committee. But in a situation like this, it seems like not an inordinate amount of voices, but more voices than 3 would be helpful in this conversation. I mean, I know if I were going to serve on it, I'm no expert in this area, so, you know, I'm going to come with not a whole lot to offer, except listening and some problem solving skills, perhaps. But if Steve Madrone decided that he wanted to be a member of this committee, which he's expressed, perhaps, you know, he's got a lot of the science behind it. Dave has some science behind what's going on. So I'd like to really put that out there for your consideration.
Yeah, I'd like to kind of concur with that. I do obviously want an engineer's opinion, but I think having one on the committee, especially if it costs us money, would be a little bit of overkill, because I think we do have enough people that have science backgrounds and experience in construction and how things go that you know, it might not be feasible, but we can at least get it within the ballpark, and then bring it, you know, when we bring it back to the council, we have that. And I also like the idea of including people that are in the watershed area, not just the city too, because of the people that are affected by, you know, how the water is, whether it's clean or available. So that's my opinion on it thus far.
And I would further amend the draft to indicate who chairs the committee. I think it's good to identify someone to lead this, and I would urge us to consider one of the counselors to chair this committee, to keep it on point and headed in a direction that really serves the purpose of the committee, which is to tackle these issues as they come up. And I do want to remind folks, there is the Trinidad Bay Watershed Council that Rebecca Price Hall has convened or reconvened after a period of absence. And so that does have a very inclusive watershed approach. And so that stretches from Big Lagoon on down to West Haven and lots of different entities. So we do have a lot of input that would also be valuable to consider. But I also agree that the committee makeup here is really the crux of this discussion, and having a nice representation sounds like is a growing interest from the council. So at some point, I think we ought to start talking about substantive changes that we are recommending to this committee, this advisory group.
I'd like to hear from the public before we make some substantive changes. Maybe they've got some ideas that we haven't thought about yet.
Sure. All right, let's bring it out to the public. Anyone from the public wish to comment on the Water Advisory Committee?
Did Mr. Madrone?
Sherry Provolt has her hand up.
Who does?
Sherry Provolt.
Okay, go ahead, Ms. Provolt.
Thank you very much, gentlemen and council tonight. Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, good. I'm keeping my video off just because the internet situation is always difficult. You know, I appreciate your conversation and your discussion as the leaders of the Trinidad Council in the Trinidad area. You know, water, like we've been talking about for so long, is such a valuable resource to us, and we cannot take this lightly. And I do think that more than 3 people on this committee is needed. You know that I'm a resident of the West Haven area and a longtime resident of Trinidad my whole life, and also a member of the Eureka tribe. But one of the things that I've experienced just as a council member is that there's a perception out there as a government, because you're a government entity, of how you want to set up your advisory committees. And so I do think it's important. I do like what Steve and Thomas was saying, is that having more people on it is really valuable, especially when it's a resource that's a commodity and we need to take care of it. So I do appreciate having a public member on it. I think that leads to transparency and having a voice of your consumer. So consumer voice is important. I do think that you can have experts come, and your experts are your engineers or various different people to present when you choose as an advisory committee to have a report on certain items. But I think 3 is too small for this group. It's an important resource and issue, as I said. And I think you should at least have 5 people on this committee, 1 being a public member or consumer. And I do like the idea of the public works person being on that. I think that they are key. They see the day-to-day usage, the day-to-day problems or solutions. And I think that they would bring a valuable input to how you want to plan and look at solutions for our water problems. The only other thing I'll say is that I am also a resident of West Haven, although I'm not in the West Haven Water District. I am the president of what's called the Moonstone Heights Mutual Water Association, which is a small water group of 14 residents, and we maintain it, and we work closely with the West Haven Services District, and just keep us in mind when you're also talking about water, because what affects West Haven affects Moonstone Heights Water Association. Thank you for letting me share those words.
Mute.
Thank you, Richard, for putting a backwards sign of I can read backwards now that I'm on mute. Any other questions or comments from the public? And thank you, Ms. Provolt, for your contributions as always. All right, seeing none, go ahead, Mr. Klompus.
Yeah, so if I'm hearing this correctly, these are the members or potential members of the committee. I'm counting like 7. 2 council members, a planning commission member, a Trinidad resident, a non-Trinidad resident, the public works manager, and the city planner. That's 7. Have I misheard the discussion?
You left out West Haven.
What's that?
You left out the West Haven representative.
Well,
I thought that was a
non-Trinidad resident.
Well,
There's a planner on there. That one, I think that one was good.
So it would be a Trinidad resident, a non-Trinidad resident, which would be West Haven, right?
Not necessarily, because we're talking about a person within our water district.
Yeah, just the service area.
Our service area representative, and then West Haven would be separate because they're a different water district.
Okay, so it'd be 2 council members, planning commission member, Trinidad resident, non-Trinidad resident, West Haven resident, the public works manager. And did I hear the city manager, yes or no? Yes.
He was supposed to attend, yeah.
I think we've called that, I think one staff member would be probably enough. If the city manager wanted to be there also, I think just having one staff member would be appropriate, and it could be Eli or Public Works.
Okay, so do we need the city planner also?
No.
No, okay. So city staff. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 members.
And I wonder if we could if we want to put it as a public member, we could probably say city or water district if we wanted to cut it down to a little bit. But I agree, I think it's a big committee.
Yeah.
And I also want, we do have, like we have, Big Lagoon has asked to be able to attend the meeting, not as maybe as a member, but they want to make sure they're at least able to know about this. And now Moonstone Heights would probably like to at least be aware. So it may grow, but I think we need to cover
and
people
we're
if necessary.
To the Trinidad Bay Watershed Council, that's already an active group. I mean, the membership that you just mentioned is the Watershed Council that Rebecca Price Hall is convening. So I understand that we want to have a wide representation. We're really, I think anyway, what we've been asked to do is to figure out an advisory committee for Trinidad water customers. And so that's where the planning commission and the city council, I think we could get away with one city councilor instead of two. I think but we ought to have enough voices in this thing so that it still remains nimble, as Eli indicated, but has representation.
Steve, one other thing I wanted to ask about, if we had shouldn't there be somehow a connection between the Watershed Council and our Water Advisory Committee? So it seems like they need to be able to understand what the other is doing.
Well, for a short minute, I was on the Watershed Council as well, and I think there's some value in making sure that there's at least a city councilor who's listening in and hearing what's going on. But we're starting to talk about duplicating efforts, I think.
Yes.
And I think, again, if I remember correctly, and if I'm misrepresenting this, please let me know. But this came out of all of these ideas. Once the vote was made regarding the feasibility study, the consensus of the group was, okay, now we have to start thinking about what actions we want to take with water and for Trinidad customers. And I believe that that's where this committee idea was formed.
Mm-hmm.
It's time to start now looking, we have a notion of all the different things that we can do to supplement and strengthen Trinidad City water resiliency, but we were just talking and talking and talking. And this group was an idea of how to take some of that talk and put it into action, prioritizing different resources. Where do we want to spend our time? What questions do we want to ask further about how to look at one of the 5 reports that we did for Trinidad City Water, and to see where do we want to spend our efforts and our resources. So I think that's really what the charge is of this group.
So what I'm hearing is that the Trinidad Bay Water Advisory Committee, is that what you call them?
Trinidad Bay.
It's already existing. What'd you say? I kept.
Trinidad Bay Watershed Council.
Oh, council. Okay, I think we should direct our city manager to reach out to them and see where they're at with this, because they would definitely be somebody I would want on the committee if we're doing the same thing, kind of, but one of us can go to their meetings and one of them can come to ours, so that we have that correspondence and that we stay on the same page on what we're on the same page with. And then where we veer off on different things that we do specifically as a city will be for, our specific, the one that they come to. But is there a number? I mean, it sounds like everybody wants about 7 voting members. It should be an odd number, I usually think, for tiebreakers, but it's not mandatory, as we know.
Does Sherry have her hand up? Is that what I'm seeing?
I think it was up from a previous comment.
Okay.
I do have another question, if you don't mind, and thank you for letting me speak during your discussion. I do think you have to be careful on the size of your committee, but I think 5 is a good number. I think this is just my thought, and you have your decisions to make. But 2 council members, remember, this is a government. This is, you're thinking of the government. You have an advisory committee of yourself, that you're going to set up. So 2 council members, 1 planning person, your public works, and 1 consumer. Your focus as Trinidad City Council is to be focusing on Trinidad City Water. That is your charge. Now, you certainly will work with the Trinidad Bay Watershed, and you may have one of the advisory committee members be a liaison to that committee. You will also work closely with other water districts in your area, but your charge is to protect the Trinidad City water and develop a resiliency for the members of Trinidad City. And so I think you should be careful about how extending you are, because then you're going to be drawn into many other things where, like Mayor Ludwig was saying, there are other committees to deal with that. So that, thank you again. You always are so kind to me and letting me speak my words.
Thank you, Sherry. So back to the council then, regarding really the draft in front of us. Do we agree that this committee needs to fit in a minivan, or are we going to have to get a bus to haul this committee around? Richard.
I really would like to keep it nimble and small, but invite anyone who wants to attend. This is a public committee. This is not an ad hoc committee. So all these meetings can be attended by the public. People can contribute their knowledge, their expertise. We can bring in consultants if needed. But there's a lot of wisdom in what Sherry was saying. 2 council members, 1 planning commission member, public works member, and a consumer. And that would be the working body. And again, it's an advisory committee, but you can also invite, the public will be invited to each meeting and can interject and can interact just like we do in a council meeting to provide opinions and recommendations. Thank you.
Thoughts on that?
Yep. Yeah, I agree too. The original 5 did sound good. It sounded workable. You know, so, and I like the people recommended with the 2 council members, the planning commission, definitely the public works person, and definitely a consumer. If anybody else thinks that somebody else would be more effective because that's 5 voting members, but if anybody else, I'm definitely willing to listen to that.
It feels like we're getting towards agreement. Can we get any comments not opposing that, but with other ideas, or are we in agreement? All right. One more attempt at any public comment on this, and then we'll bring it back to the council. All right, I don't see any hands going up or anybody waving their arms on the screen, so we'll bring it back to council. Looking for action, direction for city staff to, my guess is to modify this resolution for this Water Advisory Committee to bring it back either in consent or for further decision, action item.
I'll make a motion that we direct city staff to amend this resolution to include 2 members of the city council, 1 member of the planning commission, 1 public works member, and 1 member of the public as voting members of this water advisory committee.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Comment?
Well, real quick, Tom, and I'll get to you. I just also want to make sure that, because we've spent a lot of time on the membership, that folks are also comfortable with the purpose and other elements of the resolution. So it's certainly important that we consider the membership, but I just want to make sure everyone has thought and spoken about the other components of this Water Advisory Committee. But Tom, go ahead.
So maybe specify member of public, Trinidad city resident? Or what were you thinking, David?
I was thinking in the service area, more general, but that's why I'm still open to that if somebody feels like somebody who's actually within the city limits, but anyone that pays for the water, I think is qualified to be on the advisory committee, from my perspective anyways.
So the language that you're recommending is a water customer.
Correct.
Okay. Other discussion? All right, let's have a roll call vote on the motion to direct city staff to amend the resolution as indicated. Gabe, can you give us a roll call?
Yep. Let's start with Council Member Grover,
Yes.
Davies,
Yes.
West,
Yes.
Clompus,
Yes.
and Mayor Ladway.
Yes.
Motion carries, passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 10. Discussion decision regarding amending short-term, no,
We're on 9.
Number 9. Number 9.
number 9. Discussion decision regarding council committee assignments. And we have in our packet the current list of committees and who is assigned to each one. And our task tonight is to make sure that we have representation on all of our committees. And Richard, you've already introduced some of this information, but it looks like we have no alternate for the Sure Management Plan Implementation Committee and for the Convention Bureau. But all other committees have a slot, so we want to determine if we need to fill the alternate if these two committees are meeting. I don't think they're meeting often. And also to review if anyone needs to switch their committee assignment. So I open it up to the council for their input on either your own particular role on one of these committees, or if we need to fill the alternate positions for the management plan implementation and the Humboldt County Convention Visitor Bureau. I'll just say I'm happy with my committee assignments because I'm now and taking an active leadership role in all of them. They're making me direct these darn things, so that's good to be involved. So I'm happy with mine. Go ahead, Richard.
Yes, as I've mentioned before, I don't think we need to keep the Humboldt Waste Management Authority on this list. Trinidad is not a member of that group. They haven't been. It was looked at back in 2009 and nothing really happened. I don't think it brings a lot of benefit to us. So I'd recommend that category, that committee, be eliminated because we're not a member of the organization. I don't think it warrants our time. And I would be more than happy to volunteer to be a part of the Troy Management Plan as an alternate.
Real quick, Jack, have you ever attended Humboldt Waste Management Authority meetings?
No. Not at all.
All right. So I think it's safe to say that we don't need to include this one as one of the committees that we're assigned to.
And I think Richard would be a great alternate for the Troy Management Plan, so I think that'd be a good choice.
That's the one I wanted, but I'll take something else.
All right, David, you would have been good too. Sorry, didn't mean to make you feel bad.
No, I can reach out to the tribes if I want. You know, it's not like a mandatory thing to be on. But if you do want somebody for the Convention and Visitors Bureau, I mean, I'll alternate for that. I know. What have you been doing with that, Richard? Quite a bit, right?
Yeah, I was able to connect up all the different groups in Trinidad with this Convention Bureau to make sure the Visitor Bureau, so to make sure that their website, which is one of their major activities, has everything updated with Trinidad programs. So that's already.
I'll be the alternate for that then if you want. Just, show me the information.
All right. Thank you for your
About
volunteerism. Anyone else want to arm wrestle for a position that someone else is currently holding or do any other swapping?
What will have to be decided when the Water Committee comes up, Water Advisory Committee, that'll be at a separate meeting if who wants to volunteer for that.
And Gabe, if you don't mind scribbling a little note to yourself to add the STR Advisory Committee, just because we do have council participation in that.
Yeah, we'll do.
Thank you. All right, well,
When did council start participating in the rental advisory committee?
pardon?
When did council start participating in the rental advisory committee?
Oh, the short-term rental.
I don't believe they're a member of that committee.
You know, you're right, Tom. I was in my mind's eye, I was seeing the large meeting of all of us, but you're right. That's not a participation in the advisory. Strike that, Gabe. I misspoke.
You can add the Water Advisory Committee instead.
Yeah, yeah, that'll come on. All right, so we don't really. What we're doing is we're adding. Let's see. Gabe, did you get what people are doing? It looks like Richard is being added as the alternate to the Churai Management Plan implementation.
Got it.
And Grover as the alternate to the Humboldt County Convention.
Yes.
And we're removing the Humboldt Waste Management
And adding
advisory.
Yep. We don't need to motion anything. I accept this. It's just what it is, right?
Yep. All right, moving on then. Now we're on number 10, discussion decision regarding amending short-term rental minimum nights required for 2021 due to COVID moratorium. And because of my owning short-term rental, I recuse myself and pass the torch to Councilman West.
And you're all done because the last one is also short-term. So thanks, Mayor Ladwig. I'll take over.
Well, and then we can, I don't really have anything off the top of my head as far as future agenda items, but I'll definitely circle back with folks on that. So thank you very much, Jack, for taking over.
Okay.
And good night.
Great. Thank you.
All right, we'll see you, Steve.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, so we're going to look at item number 10, which is we're going to amend the short-term, look at the possible amendment of the short-term rentals. STR owners have suggested a waiver or reduction of the minimum requirement of 60 days rental per calendar year for this year, since they have since the moratorium is in effect of what they can do. They like to lower it. And the standard says that a full-time STR shall be rented for a minimum of 60 nights per year in order to maintain an STR license. The manager feels that 60 is, since there's been so much inactivity, they'd like to postpone that. They like to waive the minimum activity. At the February council meeting, it was suggested to reduce them from 60 to 30 for 2021. So the suggested action tonight is to reduce the minimum number of requirement of 60 days down to 30 days for 2021. And we could also waive it completely or keep it the same. So those are our options. I'm going to first go to our manager and see if he has anything he wants to add to this.
Jack, thank you. You summarized it so well, you leave me speechless.
Oh, good. I must be getting late. Okay, so first, council, does anyone in the council have Richard, go ahead.
So if we look at short-term rentals can rent 12 months a year, and we eliminated 1 quarter, essentially 3 months. If you look at it proportionally, the 60-day requirement should be reduced by 1/4, which means it should be reduced to 45 days. Again, we eliminated 1 quarter of the year. So if you took the 60 days and eliminated 1 quarter of it, that would be 45 days. So I don't know what the logic was in reducing it by 50% when we really only took away 3 months of short-term rentals. So,
and by the way,
I could weigh in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I seriously thought about the 45 days also, and I was going to include it in here, and then I deleted it. And the reason I deleted it is we're already like halfway through March. But the biggest problem is the fact that by having the moratorium, we really created a difficulty for the STRs to book into the future, because a lot of them just didn't know for sure if this was going to go on longer, which we had indicated it could. We said we could cut it shorter or take it on longer. So it's going to be hard for them to like ramp up real quickly. Usually you make your reservations like a few months in advance. So I think right now, when they're making reservations, I think most of them are going to be from May forward. So I just thought that maybe the 30 days would be more reasonable, so that this way it gives them a chance to ramp up.
I also agree with that too, because I'm kind of giving them a little leeway, trying to give people a little leeway because it's been so tough too. So, you know, kind of give them the extra stretch like Eli was just describing there.
Comment as well. So I've been leaning towards not doing any type of reduction. I could live with what Richard has proposed. It seems logical and reasonable to do that. And I'd just like to point out that this is a very bizarre portion of our ordinance. If you look at ordinances around the state, you can usually it's a maximum number of nights that you can rent for the year. It is not that you have to rent for a certain number of nights per year. And simply that's the reason for that is to lessen the impact on the residents in the communities where these things exist. So my first preference would be not to reduce it at all. My second preference would be to follow Richard's idea of proportionally reducing the number. And I just wanted to point out the bizarre nature of that part of the ordinance.
Yeah, mute. You're mute, Jack.
I thought I was on, sorry. I could go both ways. I think the 45 or the 30 would be good. I do think under the circumstances that this is such a difficult year that, you know, I guess I could go either way, but I think the 45 sounds like a good idea. I think Richard brought up a good way of looking at it. So
I can live with that as well. I can live with that too, if everybody's in compliance.
All right. If any other comments by the council? All right. Do we have any public comment? I don't see anyone, so I'm going to bring it back to the council and let's see if we got a motion.
Do you want to do it?
Sure. I'll make a motion that the city reduces the minimum requirement of 60 days of short-term rentals to 45 days for 2021.
I'll second that.
All right. If anything else? Any other comments? All right, Gabe, could you please do a roll call?
I mean, does he have to say as amended or something, or did I have to?
No, I don't think it was amended. We just picked 45.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I'll just recite that again just to make sure we're all on the same page. Motion was made by Compass and seconded by Grover to reduce the minimum required nights from 60 to 45 days for the 2021 calendar year. And with that, we will go for the vote. Councilmember Compass.
Yes, aye.
Councilmember Davies.
Aye.
Councilmember West.
Yes.
And Councilmember Grover.
Yes.
And passes 4-0, and then we have one refusal on the record. Mayor Ludwig.
Okay. I will move on to the final item, which is a discussion and decision regarding short-term rental wait list or moratorium on filling available STR licenses. The short-term rental wait list is written up in the ordinance, and you can read it under the analysis. I think rather than reading it, I think I'm going to have Eli give us a brief a brief outline of what he's put in here. And is that all right, Eli? Would you like to take this and explain it to us briefly?
Sure. Yeah, so the STR ordinance has a section 6 in it under application requirements. It addresses having a wait list and a lottery. Currently, the city has, at least as of last year, we had 31 active licenses. This year, we had 29 applications, which left us with 2 open licenses. One open license is in the UR zone, and one is in the SR zone. We had a wait list of 6 different houses for the UR zone, and currently we don't have anyone in the SR zone. So the thought was to move forward and have a lottery for that one position. In addition to that, there are 2 houses in the UR zone that are on the market, which are likely going to sell, and since the market is hot for real estate. So once they sell, the STR licenses do not carry on to the new owners, and as a result, those two positions would become available for someone in the lottery process. So the ordinance provides for having a lottery and a wait list. And the lottery is basically, they said the city will randomly draw a name from the waiting list for the appropriate type of license and zone. I was thinking of administering it along the lines of how the state lottery is handled, which would be basically like a drum that has the numbers are in there, they're tossed around, sort of like drawing bingo numbers, and then just pulling, that one out, and then once the others become available, doing the same. The other option is Councilmember Davies had suggested that there would be a moratorium on filling the available STR licenses within the city, so that therefore we would not have a wait list. And the issue there is the fact of tying it to not only the renewal of the STR ordinance, which can take a while, but also working on housing in the general plan, a parking study, and a few other things, which means that it might be years. I'm sure it would be years. It would be years. I don't know how many years, but at least it would be several years before we'd be able to address a wait list. So I'm just suggesting in the interim that we follow the current ordinance the way it's worded, and then in the future, any changes to the ordinance, then we would apply those at that time. So I'll turn it over if there's any questions or comments.
In this case, I hope, Tom, you don't mind, and I call on you first, please. I know you've got some information for us.
Sure, yeah, I suggested have a moratorium on the addition of any new STR licenses for a few reasons, and Eli mentioned a couple of them, but I will restate those as well. The STR ordinance is well overdue to be reviewed, and there could be substantial changes. There possibly could not be substantial changes, but it's been suggested of licensing these things in a different way, which we haven't had a fleshed out conversation about. The things in the ordinance that still need to be worked on. The complaints process is still not clear. Even though there's a section about this lottery, it doesn't say how long a wait list would last. The procedure for a lottery, we just made one up right now, but it's not written in the ordinance. As I mentioned earlier tonight, we have some serious land use issues in this town regarding visitor services, which technically short-term rentals should be visitor services, but they're in residential areas. So we have in our general plan conflict that visitor services area is being qualified and counted perhaps as affordable housing. That needs to be straightened out so that we can figure out the percentage of houses of housing that we have available in this town for full-time residents. We don't have definitions for every short-term rental in this town. The bed and breakfast, as has been pointed out to us, does not have a definition in the short-term rental ordinance. So I feel that there's just too many outstanding issues to continue as business as usual. We should put a moratorium on any new licenses until we get these sorted out and the ordinance can be have a robust discussion around what the ordinance should exactly look like. And that's the reason I'm suggesting a moratorium.
Richard.
Yes, I have some serious problems with affordability of housing in Trinidad, and it's not getting any better. The fact that the city plan doesn't have, to me, the right data in it for affordability housing. RVs are not permanent vehicles. They're not permanent homes. They're vehicles on wheels. So for my particular problem, I'd like to see the city work out specifically exactly what ordinances they want to have and clarify them and clean them up. Because to me, the worst part would be that you extend additional short-term rentals and then realize that you've made a mistake and then want to claw them back. I would prefer to have a moratorium for now until the city's able to clarify its position and ordinances. And then once it's clear, then it's going to be easy to make a decision whether to include more short-term rentals or to keep it the way it is. But to proceed now without correcting some past irregularities, I think is the wrong decision to make. So I'm supportive of a moratorium until we can get our ordinances in order, so to speak. But thank you.
I could go either way on this. I'd like to hear if Jack's got anything to say. I know Councilmember Davies has put a lot of research into this too, so I respect that too and want to, take that advice of his experience in it. Because I did, and then Richard kind of even clarified what Tom said to me because it just kind of added to it. So I probably leaning towards the moratorium recommendation because there does seem to be some valid reasoning behind that.
I like to ask you a question. Oh, you done, David? I'm sorry. Didn't want to interrupt you. I want to ask a question. If we were to do this moratorium at this point after people have already put their homes up and are expecting that they were able to, someone was able to pick up these short-term rentals, are we going to be legally okay to suddenly run a moratorium right in the middle of this? Or I'm just not sure how this might affect us if we say suddenly, no, we aren't going to do it.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'll have to ask Russ. But yeah, number one, legally, but number two, out of fairness, a number of these people have been on here for years waiting for the opportunity to have an STR. The other thing that's important for the council to consider is the fact of revenue for the city. Now, we're going to have some serious losses of revenue, meaning that the harbor, we're going, if it ends up being the fee to trust, we're going to lose the revenue from the harbor. And then also the cell towers on Trinidad Head, we already have removed the AT&T, which is $1,000 a month, and we removed Sprint, which is another $1,000 a month. And then Verizon is $3,000 a month. So all of those things weigh in. The other thing is the fact that I attend all the STR committee meetings, and I actually, agree with the fact of, keeping the number of STRs not to grow. Currently, we have the 31 equals 15% of our housing stock. And as long as we don't go over the 31 and we use the wait list in the interim until, as it was intended to be, until we do change the STR ordinance, because in addition to the STR ordinance, you're talking about changes to the general plan, changes to zoning and so on. Like I said, that's going to involve a number of years. So I hate to have the city lose that revenue in the short term. Again, I don't think we should have any more than the 15%, which is the 31. And then in the future, as we address the STR ordinance, we can talk about if that number should be different. So I could check with Russ, but like I said, number one would be there may be a legal issue, but number two, I think just out of fairness, we've had the ordinance in place for over the 2 years, so it's been like 3 years now, and maybe even longer. But either way, we've had the ordinance in place. People have followed by putting their name on the wait list, and I think out of fairness, it would be good to honor that. We're not increasing the number of STRs in the city. We have to stay within the number that we currently have. And then in the future, we could definitely look at that. So that's my suggestion.
Okay. Yeah, the income loss was my caveat to the whole thing of putting a moratorium on it too, because I know we've already lost so much money.
Tom, go ahead.
Yeah, when you look at this situation statewide, 15% of your housing stock is a large number. There are other municipalities in the state actually we're doing the opposite of what most coastal cities are trying to do right now, which is trying to rein this in and curb it or potentially, severely limit it. There are cities that have said 1% is all we're allowing is STR. And 15% is a huge number of housing. And I think it's a far stretch to even think that the city is legally obligated to have someone think they could have a vacation rental at any time. We can, the laws can change. I mean, I think that's a stretch. And if we want to throw another $1,000 at the lawyer for some advice on that, then I guess that's what we could do. But I think it's a responsible thing to do is to wait. This city determined that certain things were not acceptable for revenue. We could be really raking in a lot of tax money on cannabis dispensaries in this town. The city council, in my opinion, did a very responsible thing years ago by not allowing cannabis dispensaries in the city limits of Trinidad. I'm tired of seeing, well, we got to look at the revenue. We got to look at the revenue. I've been listening to that argument for years. Listen to the citizens that live in this town. And you know what? If we need to cut positions for this town, if we need to cut things because we don't bring in the TOT that is budgeted, then that's something we're going to have to look at. And that's something I'm very prepared to look at.
Richard.
Yeah, I think we're only talking about 2 or 3 licenses. Am I correct, Eli?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. So to me, the income we would make from the tourist occupancy tax for those 2 rentals is relatively insignificant. If we were to say we're going to go from 29 down to 10, I'd say, yeah, we're going to have a budget issue. But the concept of saying that the income from the tax of 2 short-term rentals is going to make or break our yearly budget, to me, is just a false assumption. I'm concerned about affordability of housing, and it's a slippery slope of allowing more of our housing stock to be made into hotels and bed and breakfasts. I really would prefer to have a full-time neighbor than a neighbor who's different every week. From a safety perspective, from a neighbor perspective, I think Trinidad, at least from my limited experience, I've only been here 7 years, the amount of short-term rentals we have is probably fair and enough, and I don't see the need right now to increase it until we really understand how we can get control of affordable housing in our town. It's a small town, there's not a lot of houses left. I would prefer they not be turned into short-term rentals. Thank you.
So I'm just going to say, one of the problems I have is just that we've put this ordinance together, and right now we're, the people who have these houses out here have already looked at this and said, well, this is what I want to do, and we're kind of pulling the rug out from under them, which I feel is questionable. I do agree that I think it'd be nice to be able to taper back. I just feel that this is a tough thing to do, to have people kind of in line, as they said, waiting maybe for quite a while, thinking this is their opportunity to get a short-term rental. But I do agree that we need to do something about housing. We also need to look at this ordinance and start working on it in a different way. I would actually be able to go along with this, but I'm a little unsure, and I'm also unsure if they could come back and say, this ordinance said we were going to get this place, and now you're taking what we expect to have income away from us. Tom, go ahead.
So I just would like to remind you that because they don't get a short-term rental license, does not preclude them from renting long-term.
True.
On my street, there are places that have, because of COVID and because of the way that they were being managed, these places were not being used as short-term rentals. We have had a young family move onto my street as a long-term rentals on the street. We have other houses on the street that have been used as long-term rentals. And I can tell you what, it feels like a neighborhood. And I'm sorry if the people aren't going to get the thousands that they thought with a short-term rental, but long-term rentals are hot in this town. People look for them. They would be rented in a heartbeat. And that's a pure business decision on the owner's part. We do not need to cater to someone who wants to have a short-term rental because they can make an extra 30K, 40K a year over what they can make on a long-term rental. That is not the city's responsibility.
Richard?
Yeah, I just don't think as a city we have to guarantee that if someone wants to have a short-term rental, that they're going to get it. I mean, ordinances change, cities change, attitudes change. I just, I feel that because we really don't have a city plan, a city plan that's 10 years overdue, why would you want to accumulate even more short-term rentals before you get your house in order? So from my perspective, I just don't think it's necessary. And if I was a real estate investor and I couldn't get a short-term rental, I could either rent it long-term or I could turn around and sell it. And maybe it would become affordable housing for somebody who wants to live here full-time.
David?
Yeah, I like the arguments I'm hearing, and if it wasn't for long-term rentals, I wouldn't be here because I don't own the house. I rent long-term. And it does, like, I get what you're saying with the neighborhood when you know people and they're there a little longer, their routines, not that you're nosy or anything, but it's just nice to know it's a little more secure feeling than strangers coming in and all hours of the night. Yeah, I like that, the good arguments made here tonight. And I like anything that kind of pushes us to revise things and to finish things, if that's the case, because that's what I got trained for. So I'm definitely down with that. I think it does push us when you make it like this, like, okay, let's review and revise it and adopt it. Like it's going to happen more if we apply a moratorium.
I think we've pretty much talked this over. Let's see if we got some public comment that would like to. Anybody want to add anything? The two of you or three of you?
Right.
Step with. Okay, Sherry, please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I own houses in the town site of Trinidad, and I'm so proud to have long-term renters there. I rent to a lady who has 3 children who go to Trinidad Elementary School, and both my renters work in the town site of Trinidad. They work for either the pizza place or the lighthouse. and they can walk to work. This is the beauty of the city of Trinidad. We're walkability, we're economic, we have a community that supports our children growing up. And I purposely made the decision to rent to people who want to live and to work in the Trinidad, to make it a community. I can easily, be on that list, to rent, but I grew up in, like you all know, I walked those streets. Those houses were fields that I was playing baseball on, and now they're apartments in various different houses. But it's still the environment and community sense that's really, really important. And I do think it's time to take a time out. There's nothing wrong with taking a time out and really looking out. What are your values? And you all came to Trinidad because of you value the community. You value where you are and the community sense that it is. You didn't come to Trinidad because it's a lot of vacation rentals. And I know, Jack, you've lived in Trinidad a long time with your wife, Jan. And, so how long, this little school has lasted. And so I as a person who has 2 houses in the town site, whoever said it, I think you said it, the house is wrecked like hotcakes. We have no problem of renting houses long term in Trinidad, so I think you have to think of what your values are. And I agree that you should probably consider a moratorium at this time until you really look wholeheartedly at your ordinance. Think about, is 15% too much? Do we want to do, 12%? Do we want to do 10%? Housing, is expensive in Trinidad. There is no way that you can afford housing in Trinidad. And so I'm proud to be a landlord that has long-time renters. And I'm proud that my renters contribute to the economic of the city of Trinidad. So that's just my perspective as a landowner in Trinidad. To 2 people, 2 families, not just 2 people, 2 families in Trinidad contribute both economically and to our community. So I know this is a decision because you do have decisions to make. And just off topic, somebody did mention the fee to trust situation. I don't know that situation very much. I do know that will be a loss, significant loss to Trinidad. And I'm not sure how to consider that situation, but it might be too late for the city, but that's certainly something to consider how that's going to impact you. And what can you do in the interim, or what can you do to mitigate that situation? So thank you again. Very generous for my words.
Thank you, Sherry. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Please let me know. I'm not seeing anybody right away, so let's bring it back to the council.
And if I could just make a few more comments. So, unfortunately, with the long-term rentals, the city doesn't get any revenue as far as that is concerned. And the 2 or 3 licenses actually are usually at least 5,000 each. So it's probably close to about 15,000 of a loss in revenue. And who knows, maybe we might have to relook at this in the future, because you know, general plan we know is going to take a long time. It's taken a long time. And then the STR ordinance, personally, I think, you know, it won't take that long personally, because I think you know, we just need to tweak it. But unfortunately, it takes long because it's probably going to be addressed first by the STR Advisory Committee, then go to the Planning Commission, then go to the City Council. Basically, the other thing is percentage-wise, yes, Tom's right, you know, 15% compared to other cities. But, you know, other cities, you know, such as Arcata's got 100 STRs, and it's like maybe about 1.5% of their housing stock. We just don't have a whole bunch of houses. So really a small number, which would be like around 30, you know, in most cities, there are hundreds to thousands. You know, if you're talking about like South Lake Tahoe and you know, places like that, even Truckee, you know, they're in the thousands as far as their homes. Now, of course, the Coastal Commission wants us to have some visitor services and have some places available for visitors. We only have the B&B other than that. Our city doesn't have any hotels. So that's something to be considered also, you know, because the STRs are really filling the void of the fact that we don't have hotels. Now, naturally, yes, you know, people can stay outside the city limits, but we don't really benefit, you know, tax-wise from that. And our city is basically, at least this is my estimate, that the STRs generate about a quarter of our revenue, and that's a sizable amount of our revenue. So you know, so anyway, I just want you to be thinking of all of those things also. As far as I'm concerned, you know, like I said, I don't think we should add any more STRs. I don't think we should go over the 31, but we do have an STR ordinance that is in place, and I think until it is changed, that we should, you know, follow the STR ordinance with the wait list. So that's my suggestion. In addition to that, I will check with Russ to find out what his thoughts are.
All right, I have a motion. Thank you for that. And I would move that we apply a moratorium on filling new available STR licenses until the STR ordinance and general plan have been reviewed, revised, and accepted by the city council and the coastal commission. Because when the STR amendment is done, or the STR ordinance, it has to be gone through the coastal commission. It has to go through the local coastal plan process. So we need to have the city council and the coastal commission.
I'll second that.
Muted, Jack.
I just would like to only consider if Eli comes back and Russ says, you know, this could be a legal issue, and only to just make sure that we're not making this and saying we can't, you know, I don't know. I'm just concerned that we have something in writing that would come back to make it miserable, but I don't know. I mean, I'm going to agree with this because I do think it's probably a smart idea, but because I do think we need to look at it. But I would be concerned if he came back next time and we had made this agreement, and then he said, well, our lawyer said this is a really bad idea. So I don't know how to handle that, but
we put moratoriums on a couple times this year. This is just a different type of
want to be sure.
moratorium.
just want to be careful. That's all.
Well,
But I don't know if we can do anything like that if we even need to. But I'll just leave that with you, and we can. You've got your we've got a first and a second, so now we can make a vote. So go ahead. Is there anything else? Do you want to discuss anything else?
Well, we went back and forth with it.
Okay. All right, Gabe, I think we're ready. Go ahead.
Okay, just to clarify, I do not know what the motion is. Tom just went off.
The alternative action to apply the moratorium.
no, it's more than that. I'll read you the motion again. Hang on, I gotta find it.
Maybe if you have it typed up too, maybe you can read it now and then we can get it from you and typed up. after the meeting or something, that'd be great.
I'll just read it a few words at a time because I don't have it typed up.
That sounds good.
Apply a moratorium
Okay.
on filling available STR licenses.
Yep.
Until the STR ordinance and general plan have been thoroughly reviewed, revised, and adopted by the city and the Coastal Commission.
I second that.
Okay. We'll go ahead with the vote here, and we'll start with Clump.
You want to run that by us and just
Oh, sure. So apply a moratorium on filling available STR licenses until the STR ordinance and general plan have been thoroughly reviewed, revised, and adopted by the city and the Coastal Commission.
Perfect. Thank you.
Wampus,
Aye. Yes.
Davies,
Aye.
West,
Voice. Yes.
and Grover.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. The last thing that we need to work on is just if any of you have any future agenda items you want to make sure we get on next time.
Yes. I would like to bring up the 2009 traffic study that was completed to review whether or not the city should implement a three-way stop sign at Edwards and Trinity Streets.
Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, I want to work on getting a sidewalk installed on the north side of Edwards. So I'm going to be introducing a resolution soon that describes that.
Okay. Tom, do you have anything?
No, I think just the other things that we've had tonight with the new advisory committee, the water advisory committee comes back with the resolution. We've already discussed those things.
Okay.
And if there could be a little bit more advance notice of when the meeting is scheduled in April, maybe a little bit earlier so that I can get my reports in prior to the meeting. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
It's generally the second Tuesday of the month.
Right. Yeah, I want you to know that I did get mine in just because of the pressure you got on it. So I do expect to have yours in. Okay. All right. All right. Eli, anything else, or we're ready to go?
We're ready to go.
Okay, then meeting's adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.